Sure.
Working with various departments throughout LA County.
Wow, that's fantastic. Now, what is your reception? Some people are so reluctant to seek help, yet by the time you've come in, they've asked for your help, right?
Well, sometimes it's very difficult for people to receive strangers into their homes. Sometimes it's very difficult to admit that you need help and that you're allowing someone to come in and assess your medical status, your psychosocial status, and to refer you to various resources. A lot of people like to do things on their own, and you know, and that's great, but there are times when someone is at the point where they can't do it by themselves. They really don't know how to access some of the resources in LA County because the phone trees are very difficult to negotiate. Yes. And they don't know how to access these things.
Right, and that's assuming that they have admitted to themselves, I have a problem.
Right.
There's too many people that just, they don't pick up the phone. And yet here APLA is right here for people and will listen, and you and the team are vastly experienced. I mean, nobody's going to throw a surprise at you at this point, I hope.
No, I don't think so.
It's amazing how this drama, HIV/AIDS, has played out over the way people were treated as if they were lepers.
Right.
And then there was sort of an awakening within the culture and acceptance and great medical advances. And these medical advances, just to get to the right point, has meant that many people are living longer with AIDS.
Right. And with living with AIDS also comes the usual diseases that come with aging.
Yes.
Such as diabetes, high blood pressure, you know, heart disease, cancers, you know, a myriad of diseases. So not only do we manage people who have HIV and AIDS, but also the comorbidities that come along with that, because some of them are highly related, in addition to things such as hepatitis B and C.
Sure. Well, so that has stalked the community for ages. And those darn dirty needles. Oh, my God. How about drug use among seniors living with AIDS? I mean, they're on so many meds anyway. Is that a particular issue that you need to address sometimes, to say, I think you need to talk to someone?
Well, I think that in any segment of the population, there are people who use drugs.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter if we're talking about an adolescent to young adult to seniors. It happens. So yes, it's true, because some of our seniors have lived through the primary epidemic, and they were doing drugs all along the way, and they're still doing them.
Yes, that's true enough. How about the volunteer base? Are you finding that the seniors are willing to share their stories and their history to the younger gay community? Well,
I would have to say that a lot of the seniors that I see are pretty much homebound, so they don't get out too much. It's very difficult for them to negotiate traffic, and transportation resources are limited in LA County. I think that some of the criteria to access some of the access services, for instance, make it very difficult for some of our seniors to be able to get around. And frankly, you know, I'm not really sure that the younger population learns from the older ones. You know?
It is amazing. I joked with you earlier that it seems every 5 years you have to repeat the message all over again.
And I think with the advent of the medications, people began to live longer, but there was also a concern that some of the younger guys that were coming through the epidemic thought that all they had to do was take the meds and everything would be just fine.
Yeah, and not modify their behavior.
And not modify their behavior. And the thing is they didn't really see their friends die of HIV or AIDS related illnesses, and so they just thought somehow that wasn't going to happen to them.
Well, yes, we all believe we're immortal when we're young, that's for sure, but you know, when you're facing a knee replacement, now how is this going to work with the drugs that I'm already taking? Is that the kind of stuff you see now?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Sure.
We see all sorts of different problems with people trying to negotiate diabetic-related issues and loss of sight, along with their HIV, the needs to take their meds. You know, how can you take your meds if you can't really see the meds that you're taking.
And I'm sure that sense of being overwhelmed is profound, actually.
Yes. Yeah.
But the good news, as you've shared with us, is that help is available.
Right.
And you're exactly the kind of person that can knock on the door and say, hello, I'm Sherry.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is that with the senior population, we have to engage them in a way so that they feel safe with us. And I think that having case managers who have a great deal of experience, you know, working in the home and with this population helps them to be at ease.
I can see why. Sherry, thank you so much for taking time to share with us.
No problem. Thank you.
We'll be right back. And now it is time for Caregiver's Corner.
As a family caregiver, good communication is very important. It's important that you say and hear what each other have to say, whether it's the family, whether it's the care receiver, or even the professionals that you're working with when you're dealing with doctors and other providers of programs and services. So one of the more important things to do is remember that when you're communicating, that you talk in a way that you will be heard instead of shut down. If you're complaining and whining, people tend to tune that out. But it's more important that you just convey what you need. Also, it's very important to remember the difference between what we call you messages and I messages. If the message says something more like, you're always late, that sounds blaming and starting a fight. But if you say something like, I need to be on time, or I really like to be on time, that's more of what your needs are. If you say things like, you never listen to me, versus, I need to be heard, this is what I have to say, it just changes the whole tone of the conversation. So we remind you of the importance of communicating effectively without blaming and without being turned off. When you communicate effectively, it helps to also build relationships. Why? Because everyone feels that they're having a chance to say what's on their minds. It's important that everyone communicate. Building relationships will make it very successful in order to be a better caregiver, not only for the care receiver, but for the entire family. It also will make you feel better because you feel you're being heard. It releases stress and makes sure that things don't get overwhelming. So practice using I messages rather than you messages so that everyone can thrive.
Time for Seniors on Aging. Today the question is, what's it like growing old in Los Angeles?
My name is Ignacio Garay. Getting old in Los Angeles and getting old anywhere is the same. You got to take it one day at a time. You have to not worry about everything and just be yourself and be good to others and treat others the way you wish to be treated. You can't be nasty one day and nice another. Life is a circle, and what you do will come back and bite you in the behind. So you have to treat life like it is something special, something to cherish. You wish it would go on, but sometimes the door closes. Take it one day at a time. Just take it as it comes. And, you know, it'll come back the way it should be. I mean, I'm 70 years old now. I didn't expect to get over 30. So you know, that's the way it is. I'm retired, and that's a whole ball of wax. That's it.
That's all the time we have for today's show. I want to thank the people of AIDS Project Los Angeles for opening their headquarters to us, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Some good information. From all of us at the Department of Aging, I'm Paul Peterson saying, see you next time.
Experts say Los Angeles will one day be hit with the big one, a major high-magnitude earthquake which will come with no warning and leave a huge impact. Hundreds or even thousands dead and injured, and billions of dollars in damage. It's a question of not if, but when such a quake will strike LA. Are we prepared? Are you prepared? To help answer those questions, the city took part in Golden Guardian, a week-long series of statewide exercises designed to test our ability to deal with a catastrophic natural disaster or terrorist attack. On November 13th, the Shakeout Drill was held, a simulated 7.8 earthquake, and all more than 5 million people took part statewide. Here at Bishop Alemany High School in Mission Hills, 300 students volunteered to act as victims of the quake, and they really got into character.
I'm burned in my face, and I have a bruise on my arm, my wrist right here. You can see on my hand.
I have a burn injury, well, kind of a burn, more gruesome than a burn, normal burn. Then I have a scratch on my cheek and a head gash, so I'm a little messed up right now.
At 10 a.m., Bishop Alemany students joined thousands of other people throughout the city and millions statewide in reacting to a simulated 7.8 earthquake. These young people did what they've been taught to do when a quake hits. They got under their desks to write things out. In this exercise, the quake lasted a full 2 minutes. After the rumbling had stopped, they made their way through smoke-filled halls to a predetermined meeting area outside.
Mark?
Here.
Okay. Jonathan?
Here.
Students, I should not hear a word until we have roll taken. We've gone through search and rescue, not a word.
Of course, in a real quake, many of these students would be hurt. So in this exercise, the injured were taken to the school's football field, be evaluated, and then transferred to nearby Providence Holy Cross Medical Center to be treated. At a news conference here, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger talked about why Golden Guardian is so important to all Californians.
It's one thing to talk about being ready for emergency, but it's another thing to actually test it and practice it and really see each year where the shortcomings are and then to correct those shortcomings. That's what this exercise is all about.
Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa spearheaded the city's response to this fictional quake, but he made sure all city departments, especially the ever-critical first responders, LA's fire and police departments, acted as if this earthquake had been real.
Imagine the most tumultuous 2 minutes of ground shaking you've ever experienced in your life. I'm a native Angelino, and I've been through my share of earthquakes, but nothing that I've been through, nothing that any of us have been through, will compare to the great earthquake.
Imagine that when you call 911, nobody will respond. Imagine that you have to wait around for hours and sometimes days before emergency response personnel can even contact you.
So as a city, how did we do? Are we prepared for a large earthquake and its aftermath? The fact this exercise was held at all means we're ahead of the game when it comes to being ready when the big one hits.
We can talk about preparedness, but unless you actually physically prepare for an emergency of this nature, you really don't know what comes up, what are the problems, where are the kinks, what do we have to work on, where are we strong.
Succeeded beyond our wildest expectations. We've ended up with 5.3 million registered participants. I think a lot more people heard about it through the news. And it's we're trying to get the community to think about the earthquake problem. It's really easy to try and pretend it doesn't exist because they don't happen that often. And watching the city do all of this work and watching the people of the city be willing to be part of it is very inspiring.
The city is prepared. And why I say that is we in the Southern California area have gone through disaster after disaster after disaster. Earthquakes, brush fires, floods, and our first responders from the local, county, state have managed those and also have moved forward with recovery from those events in the past.
Rarely do we take the time to face the reality of the greatest natural disaster Southern California will face in our lifetime. But today, we take that time. Today, we do that exercise because we know that one day it will come.
Make sure you're prepared for the big one. For tips on how you can get ready for an earthquake or other natural disaster, log on to www.readyla.org.
Need a recycling center? Call 311, the toll-free number for non-emergency services. 311, your one call to City Hall. Illegally parked cars? Call 311, the toll-free number for non-emergency services. 311, your one call to City Hall.
G'day, Troy McCubbin from North Hollywood. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35, our city, our channel.
Good morning, Los Angeles, and welcome to the City Council meeting for Wednesday, October 19th, 2011. We're here in John Ferraro Council Chambers, room 340 of City Hall, where we meet every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. I want to welcome members of the public who are here with us today, as well as those viewers on Channel 35, which broadcasts these meetings throughout the city's cable system, as well as through the internet at our city's homepage at lacity.org, where you can catch live streaming webcasts of our council meetings and also archive footage of any of our past council meetings. Online also available is the agenda for today's meeting, any of the supporting materials that we read, and a schedule for all of our committee and full council meetings. I want to thank those members who are here on time. We have a 10-person quorum, so let's go ahead and begin the meeting. Mr. Clerk, if you'll call the roll.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Englander, Weezer, Koretz, Krikorian, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, West, and Zion, Garcetti. 10 members present and a quorum. Mr. President.
Thank you. We do have Mr. Labange excused today and Mr. Rosendahl excused to arrive at 11:15, but Mr. Krikorian and Mr. Alarcon will please join us as soon as possible. When we have 12 members, we can take up the ordinances that are the first 4 items today, but we will hold those in the meantime. But first order of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
All right, Mr. Reyes in a pink shirt moves that, and Mr. Englander in a pink tie seconds that. Without objection, those will be approved. Next order of business.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
All right, Mr. Weezer also in a pink tie, and Mr. Parks in a pink tie. Second that as well. Let's go ahead and approve that without objection. And you'll learn why everybody's wearing pink shortly. Besides that, it looks good on each of those people that I mentioned. Let's take up the items that are before us on the agenda. Colleagues, if I can direct your attention, let's run through the agenda. Mr. Clerk, first items, as I said, let's hold 1 through 4 until we have 12 members. So that takes us to the next batch.
Mr. President, items 1 through 9 are items noticed for a public hearing. Again, items 1 through 4 are ordinances, so we'll hold them on the desk for 12 members. That leaves items 5 through 9.
Okay, and we don't have any cards for any of those, so we'll close the public hearings on 1 through 9. We'll hold 1 through 4. Anybody wishing to call 5 through 9 special? 5 through 9? If not, let's go ahead and take a vote on those items. Madam Clerk, if you please open the roll. Madam Clerk, also in pink. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
And with a pink phone, too. That's good. Next item, please, or next items.
Items 10 through 13 are items for which public hearings have been held. The committee report for item 12 has been submitted and distributed for council's consideration.
Okay. We have items 10 through 13, colleagues. Mr. Cardenas? Thank you, Mr. Oh, that'll only happen once a year, Mr. Cardenas. Mr. Reyes? Also? Okay, both of you? Okay.
13.
Oh, 13. Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Anybody wishing to call 10 or 11 special? If not, let's go ahead and open the roll on those two. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
Items 14 through 29 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay. If there's no objection to consideration, those are before us. Do we have any cards on any of these items?
Mr. President, yes, we do. We have cards on items 21, 24, 25, and 26.
Okay, and I'll call 25 special as well. Mr. Zine?
17 and 28.
17 and 28 for Mr. Zine. Mr. Koretz?
I'd like to call item 27 special.
All right. 27 for Mr. Koretz. Are there specials, colleagues? If not, we'll close the public hearings on the remainder, and let's take a vote on the balance. That's 14 through 16, 18 through 20, 22, 23, and 29. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
All right, those are approved as well. Still awaiting Mr. Krikorian and Mr. Alarcon. If you'll please join us as soon as possible. Let's go to our general public comment. Okay, sure. Council District 5, if you'd like to take out of order number 27, we can do that, and then we'll come back for our public comment.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. It's my great pleasure today to welcome to our chambers Neil Zucker of Help Feed the Hungry, which is a fantastic group of dedicated volunteers and professionals who are doing what they can to end hunger in the United States in our lifetime. Sadly, right here and now in Southern California, 2 out of every 6 families go to sleep hungry every night. A grim reality that is particularly hard to fix during these dismal economic times. That's why I'm so delighted that the City of Los Angeles is honoring Help Feed the Hungry by declaring November 4th through 6th Help Feed the Hungry weekend. During that weekend, in advance of the Thanksgiving holiday, Help Feed the Hungry will be especially active in important efforts aimed at collecting food items and feeding and assisting the hungry and helping countless individuals and families in need. On behalf of those who they feed and on behalf of our entire city, I salute Help Feed the Hungry and thank all those involved for the good that they do and the compassion that they embody.
Thank you very much, Mr. Koretz. All right, let's go ahead and open the roll, take a vote on Help Feed the Hungry weekend here in the city of Los Angeles. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Thank you. That is approved. Thank you, Mr. Koretz. We'll first go for our public comment out to Van Nuys. Residents of Los Angeles can always avail themselves of both our Van Nuys and San Pedro City Halls, if that's closer to where you live, not only to follow the council meetings, but to testify, as you'll see shortly. We give that service to both the San Pedro and Van Nuys City Council chambers, so just show up there, fill out a card, and we'll be sure to get you in the mix. Our first speaker is from Van Nuys. A very good morning to you, Mr. Candido Mares.
Good morning, Mr. President, council members. I just want to thank you for the early Christmas gift. Yesterday, item 7, the waste, fraud, and abuse item was absolutely wonderful. I want to thank Mr. Zine. Mr. Zine, we look forward to having you as our next city controller. We want to thank Ms. Gruhl for her efforts. But again, Mr. President, you and the council members are finally taking a look at this. We brought this to you back in 2004. It's about policy and practices of the city of Los Angeles. If we don't change the policy and practices, you can always pick on the little guy. You can always point him out and blame him, but it goes from the top to the bottom. So if we don't fix the policies and practices of this city, we're going to have continued waste, fraud, and abuse. I want to thank Mr. Sales, Thomas Sales, the president of the DWP Commission. Yesterday, he made it very clear to the DWP management that he would no longer look at contracts unless they were complete and thorough. So we want to thank him for that. But again, Mr. President, we've been waiting a long time, and I'm looking forward next month or a month and a half to let my story be told, because, again, it's wrong to punish those on the bottom when those on top are the ones that are allowing the abuse to take place. So again, thank you, Mr. Zine, thank you, Ms. Gruhl, and thank you, Mr. President, council members.
Thank you, Mr. Mares. Our next speaker is here in council chambers, Antonio Ramirez. After that will be Michael Hubman.
Good morning. This is a matter of principle. I'd like to report the homes and addresses of criminal illegal aliens and gangbangers who are the criminal empire of East LA, and they spread their tentacles all over California. They are Luis and Luz Moya, who have been evicted from 3747 East 55th Street. Felipe Rodriguez, Ofelia Rodriguez, and Luis Garcia, 3721 East 55th Street, Maywood, California, 90270. And again, the following all are on East 55th Street. They are 3738, 3739, 3744, 3748, 3749, 3750, 3759, 3804, 3805, and 3806 through 3813. They are all on East 55th Street, Maywood, California, 90270. The next ones are 3804 Carmelita Street, Maywood, California, 5417 Carmelita Street, Maywood, California, 3738 East 54th Street, Maywood, California, all on 90270. 3746 East 54th Street, Maywood, California. Maria Cruz, Manuel Cruz, all on 3741 and a half East 55th Street, Maywood, California. From El Salvador, criminals. 3747 and a half Valerie Jimenez and Jesus at 3747 and a half East 55th Street, Maywood, California. 3750, 3754, 3757, 3758, all on 58th Street, Maywood, California, 90270. And the reasons I'm giving you notice of all these is because these people are committing criminal enterprise. They are creating home invasion robbery, welfare fraud, ID theft, violence, domestic terrorism all across East LA in the Safe Sanctuary Haven and all across the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Michael Hubman. After that, we'll go back to Van Nuys, and John Camera will follow. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. My name is Michael Waterman Hubman. I'm a human rights, homeless rights, and right to share food activist. I'm here with another economic justice moment. The recession continues to hammer the middle class and swell the ranks of the poor. The rich have recovered what they have lost in the downturn and prospered. The gross inequity of income and wealth is troubling. What's worse is an overwhelming sense of injustice. We believe that the game has been rigged in favor of the high finance and bailout culture. That is what inspires the Occupy movement. The financial sector, with regulators looking the other way and elected officials in collusion, took huge profits from the growth of a credit bubble. The bubble burst and resulted in the loss of jobs, income. This took a huge bite out of the net worth of the middle class. Many of the middle class lost savings and homes. Many joined the ranks of the underclass. Wild speculation and gouging in pursuit of short-term profit led to a casino culture in the financial sector. They sold snake oil in the form of mortgage-backed securities. Then they bet against them after pushing them on to their customers. Some of the bankers indulged themselves in their own poison. They got sick. They were in trouble, but not to worry. They were rescued by bailouts from the public sector. Now the bankers are feeling better, and they are doing everything in their power to stave off preventive medicine of regulation. Along with the bailouts, there was little or nothing in these deals for the homeowner in trouble. The banks are as mean and uncompromising as ever. Is it any wonder that a sense of injustice is bringing angry and disenfranchised people out into the public space here and across the country? Thank you, and viva economic justice.
Thank you, Mr. Hubman. Appreciate your comments this morning. John Camera in Van Nuys is our next speaker. After that is Arnold Sachs back here in the council chambers. Good morning, Mr. Camera.
Good morning, council members. I, too, would like to thank you for trying to put an end to the waste, fraud, and abuse. It has gone on too long, and those who have violated the trust of the public should be punished. I just hope that we don't just punish the small guy, but those who are in charge that are allowing waste, fraud, and abuse to continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Camera. Arnold Sachs is our next speaker here in council chambers. After Mr. Sachs will be Bill Huey. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. I brought the information. When I talked yesterday regarding what you did on Friday, or the lack of what you did on Friday regarding the change to the business ordinances and the 6% benefit for local and the definition of local, I'm wondering because in September, on the 16th and on the 29th, there was a commentary in the Daily Breeze, I believe. LA should axe onerous business tax. LAI's end to gross receipts tax. So I'm wondering when you're going to have a meaningful conversation in council chambers regarding that. You know, in this story regarding the gross receipts tax, it states that Lloyd Grief, chairman of the Business Tax Advisory Committee that examined the city's tax structure for the past 20 months, and you still haven't come up with a policy. 20 months. That's half your term. That's moving, boy. I'm telling you, you're flying, boy. And then further in the story, it says changes have been made to this category over 10 years. That's 2 terms. I'm sorry. So tell me exactly how quickly you're moving to make LA business friendly. And remember, you're on the clock now because we have a fraud, waste, and abuse hotline that to notify the city controller about fraud, waste, and abuse. It's going to be, you're going to have to hire more phone operators because it's going to be off the hook. That's just a pun. So, discussion. Mr. Alarcon, you got my interest peaked because I'm just reading from the newspaper. So maybe you could clarify it like Mr. Garcetti clarified what local means, although you're still wrong, Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you very much.
Commentary by
Mr.
a lawyer.
Mr. President, I just want to take the liberty to explain to the general public that Mr. Sachs is wrong again, that in fact BTEC has taken several actions that this council has passed, in fact numerous actions based on their recommendations. It was, yes, they have perform for 20 months, but during the course of that 20 months, they send matters directly to the council, and we have approved them. For example, the business tax holiday and many other items have come through their recommendations. So they are not waiting for 20 months. We were acting as they were performing.
Thank you. I was going to clarify the same way. And if you're interested about when the discussions occur, we invite you to our Jobs Committee, Mr. Alarcon chaired, that I chair as well right now. We've been having those discussions almost every week, Mr. Saxon. As you know, those are open to the public, so please do come by. We'd love to see you there. Bill Huey is our next speaker. After that will be Mark Littman.
Good morning, Mr. President and members of the LA City Council. My name is Bill Huey. I'm the president of Fair Housing Coalition, fairhousingcoalition.com. I have a couple here, Mr. and Mrs. Lopez. They've worked hard all their life and they invested in LA. Big mistake. They bought a little house to rent out. The wrong kind of people moved in. They misrepresented themselves. Then they moved in all their friends and started tearing apart their house. Finally, Mr. and Mrs. Lopez were able to evict them. But when these people were being evicted, they made sure to do damage to the house so they can call Building and Safety. So Building and Safety comes over, and now that the house is empty, Building and Safety is trying to prosecute Mr. and Mrs. Lopez. First they said there are pipes under the house that shouldn't be there. These pipes were there when they bought the house. As Building and Safety says, well, you didn't get the permits. Well, this was before they took ownership. Then Building and Safety says, well, there's a smell. So they got a plumber to come in, a licensed plumber, and he inspected and said there is no smell, there are no leaks. Still, the inspector wants to move forward. So we have people at Building and Safety and the LA Housing Commission. We've read the articles in the LA Times about the arrest, the taking bribes, and these people are making up their own rules as they go along. And then you call their bosses, and the bosses are either unaware or pretend they're unaware or don't care. I mean, here are two decent people who are doing everything right. They have an empty house. They're afraid to rent it out because Building and Safety and LHD is on the side of the renters. Yes, there are bad renters and there are bad landlords, but there are good landlords and good renters, and somebody has to discriminate between the two. Now they want to go after these fine people, and they've done nothing wrong. The house is in order. They brought in a plumber, and yet the inspector says we're going to prosecute you anyway. This building is in District Council 10, and we'd appreciate some help from that office. Thank you very much.
Great. We'll see if we can connect you with somebody from Council District 10 if you just hang out right there. Thank you. Mark Littman is our next speaker. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Mark Littman with Occupy LA. Just wanted to let the council know that here at the Occupation, we're keeping a close eye on the events, especially the report that your CEO, Mr. Santana, just brought out, highly skewed to favoring the banks, and about the report of the bank threats that are being made to the city of charging you $58 million in termination fees if you hold the banks accountable for their actions of defrauding Los Angeles, California, and our country. Their acts are criminal and they should be held accountable, and we are keeping our eyes on the actions of this council. I would like to suggest that it is the City Council and the people of Los Angeles that write the laws and not the banks. It may not be the reality, but that is how the system should work. So I would like to suggest that if they are threatening the city with these huge fees, using these fear tactics, that we simply write an ordinance exempting us from these termination fees. We control the laws, not the banks, and we have our eyes and our ears open on what's going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Cheryl Eichley is our next speaker.
Hello, my name is Cheryl Eichley, and I am with Occupy Los Angeles. I am speaking on behalf of myself today, and I am concerned about the information I read in the LA Times. It's my understanding that the city's accounting officer said that if we go through with a responsible banking ordinance, it will cost Los Angeles $58 million. I think that maybe only some of these statistics are being presented. Maybe that office can be accused of cherry picking. I wouldn't want to accuse them of that, but some numbers that I would be interested in looking at would have to be with how much money are we going to lose if banks continue on the track that they are of foreclosing homes without the legal right to, without doing it in a proper manner? Are we going to, how much property tax are we going to lose? How much money are we going to spend on the sheriff's department evicting these homes? How much money are we going to spend on managing these blighted buildings? How much money are we going to spend on trash removal and inspections? What I want to know is how much is this really going to cost Los Angeles? It's like saying we won't stop the concentration camps because the concentration camp operators say it will cost $58 million, but to operate those concentration camps is going to cost us more in human suffering. What we need to do is tell the banks that they cannot continue to commit a holocaust on homeowners. It is the equivalent of killing the city off. Homeowners, small businesses, and community organizations deserve our support. And if the banks can't meet our criteria, if they're afraid they can't meet the scorecard, then something is wrong, and we need to stand up for those in our community who benefit the most from being here. We cannot shut out certain communities on this matter just because the banks feel that it's going to hurt their bottom line. Sometimes people are more important than bottom lines.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. That will be our last public comment speaker. We do have 12 members. If we can take up the ordinances now, items 1 through 4. If there is nobody who wishes to call the special from the council, let's go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
All right, those are approved. Mr. Zine, did you want to explain to everybody on item 28 while you're wearing a pink tie?
Are we ready? Okay, thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Zine, on item 28.
Well, thank you for wearing your pink shirt, and I'm joining the group. And I was contacted by Melissa Etheridge on this particular matter, and Ms. Perry is going to join me in this, wherever Ms. Perry is. Ms. Jan Perry. If we can have the folks come forward. Breast Cancer Awareness Month, Mr. President. And after I got a call from Melissa Etheridge, she asked if we would recognize this in City Council, and I told her that we would. We thought she would be with us today. Unfortunately, she's not able to make this appearance, but I got Spencer Lyons, Field Advocacy Director for American Cancer Society, and Alyssa Singer, Department of Mission Program, Susan G. Komen for the Cure. In October is designated as National Breast Cancer Awareness Month to promote breast cancer awareness and educate individuals about the importance of early detection for breast cancer. And today I stand with my colleague, Council Member Jan Perry, asking you to declare October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month in the City of the Angels, City of Los Angeles. Councilmember Tom LaBonge, who also co-sponsored the motion, is sorry he cannot join us today. His wife, Bridget, is a breast cancer survivor. The National Cancer Institute estimates that a woman in the United States has a 1 in 8 chance of developing invasive breast cancer during her lifetime. And in 2011, it is estimated that among U.S. women, there will be over 230,000 new cases of invasive breast cancer. There will be nearly 40,000 deaths as a result of breast cancer. Although rare, about 1% of all breast cancer causes are diagnosed in men. We're here today to emphasize the importance of early detection of breast cancer and to promote routine self-examinations and mammograms, because regular screening tests are the best way to lower the risk of dying of breast cancer. Treatment has the best chance of success when it is found early. Joining me are representatives from the American Cancer Society, Susan G. Komen for the Cure, global leader for the breast cancer movement. The Susan G. Komen, founded in 1982, has contributed $685 million to breast cancer research and $1.3 billion to community programs that help with mammograms, transportation, and other needs. As a network of breast cancer survivors and activists, they save lives, empower people, ensure quality care for all, and energize science to hopefully find a cure. Thanks to events like the Susan G. Komen Race for the Cure and the 3-Day for the Cure and generous contributions, they have become the largest source of nonprofit funds dedicated to the fight against breast cancer in the world. The largest voluntary health organization in the United States, the American Cancer Society is passionately committed to saving lives from cancer. and the American Cancer Society invest hundreds of millions of dollars every year to fight cancer on a global scale. They save lives by helping people stay well, helping people get well, finding cures, and fighting back. And thanks to their work, nearly 12 million cancer survivors and countless others who have avoided the disease will celebrate a birthday this year. So I want to commend both organizations for the wonderful work in helping fight this battle against breast cancer. We have resolutions signed by the city family, and now my colleague. What are you holding in your hand? Jan Perry.
Well, it's a little surprise, and I'll be spending the rest of the day trying to figure out where I can handcuff Dennis Zine to some stationary piece of furniture so that he can stay there and leave us all alone. So in honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, this is from LAPD, and Dennis, you can hold them. Actually, Dennis is a very sensitive man. He bought these up at the LAPD gift shop. Is that correct?
Academy, yeah.
Academy, up at the Academy, because he wanted to show that LAPD also celebrates Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And fortunately for him, the cuffs are too small. So for his wrists, so they are too small for mine too, and I don't want to be handcuffed to him. That would be more than I could bear. But fortunately, there is good news, because in 2010 there were more than 2.5 million breast cancer survivors in the United States, and that speaks volumes about why raising awareness and doing outreach and education is so important. So I encourage all of you to talk to your loved ones and encourage them to not only give themselves monthly breast examinations and to get regular mammograms. It's never too early and it's never too late to incorporate this routine into your schedule. And I think that through awareness and a call to action, as we continue to do, we continue to increase our survival rates. And for those of you who want to do more and to do something in a fun way, United Cab and Yellow Cab have pink cabs this month. You can hail throughout the month of October, so take a ride in a pink cab, because $1 for every ride goes to this important cause. You can also text PINK at 41518 and donate $10 to the American Cancer Society. Every bit helps. Okay, Dennis, are you ready to go?
And Mr. Cardenas would like to say something as well. Mr. Cardenas?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I want to thank Councilmember Zine and Councilmember Perry for having this presentation. And you're absolutely right. Awareness is a tremendous, tremendous benefactor to people who end up with cancer. Many cancers can be prevented if they're found early enough, and I think it's really important that we continue to have highly visible opportunities and exercises throughout the city and throughout this country and throughout the world to try to make sure that we not only increase awareness, but we contribute to the research and the cures for cancer. And on a side note, I would just like to thank Councilmember Rich Englander for allowing you to use his handcuffs as a prop for today's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, let's go ahead and take a vote. Mr.
Just one moment. Some comments, and then we will take the vote.
On behalf of Susan G. Komen for the Cure and all those people whose lives have been touched by breast cancer, thank you. We truly appreciate the council members' recognition of the importance of Breast Cancer Action Month, which is a powerful means of spreading awareness about breast cancer by educating and empowering women and men to take action. Breast cancer is a serious health concern in LA County. In fact, approximately 5,000 new cases are diagnosed a year, and of those 5,000, 280 are patients under the age of 40. Each year we lose approximately 1,000 patients to the disease. With the help of our generous sponsors, the education and outreach efforts of Susan G. Komen for the Cure and all its partner organizations in the fight against breast cancer have been able to fund many programs which provide diagnostic services, patient navigation, psychosocial support, and assistance projects. So thank you very much.
Can you say something?
Yeah, sure. Morning, council members, members of the public. My name is Spencer Lyons with the American Cancer Society. The American Cancer Society is committed to eliminating cancer as a major health problem, and as such would like to applaud the efforts of Councilman Zine, Councilwoman Perry, Councilman LaBonge, and Garcetti for their leadership on this issue and recognizing October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month and helping to raise awareness about breast cancer, the early detection and prevention of this disease in LA County. If anyone's interested in getting more involved in the fight and keeping up this important work, I'd like to invite you to join any of our 14 Making Strides Against Breast Cancer events taking place throughout the county. Thank you very much.
And Mr. President, we passed out pins to all of our colleagues, and we would hope that they wear them. And what we want to do is arrest cancer and put it out of business.
Very good.
Thank you. You got that?
Very
Arrest
good.
cancer and put it out of business. There you go. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Rosendahl?
Yes, just a quick comment. The other day, I came in a pink cab, as did Jan Perry and Wendy Grill. And Jan and I said a few words up there about it. And the bottom line is this. Cancer is the scourge of the earth. It is attacking everyone. I lost a sister. She was only 62 years old. She had 4 children, and now there are 14 grandchildren, and she never got to see one of them. Then there was my brother, who was only 57 when he died. Be it breast cancer, or be it colon cancer, or just be it the word cancer. The more we're aware of it, the more we do early detection, the more we get engaged in the issue, obviously it saves lives. And so from a very personal level, the first time I felt the breast cancer was my good friend Jackie Guthrie, Arlo's wife. She's still around. She did it early. She got it taken care of. And she's, you know, my sister, so to speak, and she's continued. But thank you for putting the presentation together, and I appreciate my colleagues for standing there and doing it. Bless you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
We'll
President.
go ahead and open the roll on the item, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
All right, that is approved. Next item called special.
Mr. President, that brings us to item number 12, called special for Councilmember Cardenas.
Mr. Cardenas, item number 12.
Yes, if we could have the department come up, Department of Sanitation. Council members, what's before us is, some people call it a rate increase, but the fact of the matter is, the truth is, it is an infrastructure requirement. Can you come up to the table? It's an infrastructure requirement. And I'd like to point out the 2 main reasons why we've had to undergo this responsibility of reviewing and considering the department's recommendation of these increases. And I'd like to thank the council for the many, many meetings of the committee process. I think it was 5 meetings of the E&E committee, and we just recently had a meeting of the budget committee, and we reviewed this and discussed it and asked the department many, many questions, of which you'll probably hear some of those questions repeated today in council. But I'd just like to point out the 2 main reasons why we are having to consider this, and I believe that eventually pass this. And the first main reason is question to the department. Over the last 10 years, have we seen legislation and regulations require higher standards and higher requirements that has caused increased expenditures for your department?
Councilmember Cardenas, Enrique Zaldivar, the Director of Sanitation. Yes, we have in the last 10 years seen significant regulations that have caused us to upgrade our system. Case in point is the denitrification process at our 2 water reclamation plants in Tillman Water Reclamation Plant and the LAG Water Reclamation Plant. It cost us over $110 million.
And also, as we've seen in the last 10 years, what is your prediction in the next coming 10 years? Will we see opportunities for improvement when it comes to technology, and therefore legislation and requirements for us to meet and utilize that future technology to continue to improve the water reclamation facilities, and also to continue to improve whatever it takes to make sure that we have less fines less accidents, less happenstance going on that actually costs more money to the public in those emergency situations? Do we see the next 10 years going forward that all of those things will be costing us more money than they cost us yesterday?
Yes, on that question, Councilman, there's one particular area that we're following closely that could be of significance, and that is how we are able to remove pharmaceuticals. There's all the medicines and pharmaceuticals that are in the wastewater, and whether those will be required to be removed. And that can only be done through very advanced treatment processes.
And also, one of the responsibilities that I'm sure we've started to undertake and will have to continue, certainly if it becomes a mandate to your department, is you're going to have to spend time, money, and energy to hopefully educate the public to not throw those pharmaceuticals, their old pills or what have you, and discard them in the toilet or whatever that ends up in our wastewater system, correct?
That's correct.
So my point is, what you're faced with is a responsibility to adhere to certain requirements and standards, not only for the purposes of treating the water and making sure it gets to the right place, but also making sure that we are good stewards of the environment. Because like many communities around the world, when it comes to a lack of proper sanitation, it has an extremely detrimental effect on the quality of life of the constituents, doesn't it?
Very much so, just at the most basic of our human existence.
I believe that your department has one of the most misunderstood and underappreciated responsibilities in society. And I'll quote a friend of mine who said, it might have been Will Rogers or somebody like that, somebody much smarter than me, who coined a phrase and said that water's for life, but sanitation is for dignity. When you look at the conditions of certain communities around the world, and you say that their quality of life is not what it should be or what it could be for those children, for those human beings, it's usually the conditions of sanitation or the lack thereof. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about when people flush their toilet, that's the main treatment that you're dealing with in your department that we're addressing with these fees, is how to make sure that we make sure that it gets to the right place under the right conditions and the right standards for environmental purposes and quality of life purposes, correct?
That's correct, Councilman.
Okay. Now, one thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to make sure that we all understand that for too many years in too many areas in our city, we have held back from having even small incremental increases when it comes to making sure that our departments are properly funded. Can you please let us know how we compare to other jurisdictions throughout California and in the Western region? Can you give us some examples where we're at today and where we would be tomorrow with this incremental 10-year increase that is before us?
Thank you, Councilman. And it's, of course, very important to always compare ourselves with other cities across the country and, as you said, in the region. But just to give you an example right now, we are at the bottom of the pack with some of the cities in California. San Francisco, for example, is at $85 a month. We are at just under $30 a month. So that's more than nearly 3 times the cost in San Francisco. San Diego is just under $50 a month. They are at $48 a month. Santa Monica, very much closer to home, they're at just under $40 a month compared to our $30 a month. So we are in the lower side of the pack here in the region in California. And nationally, Lisa, why don't you talk about the national?
And also, at the back end of that question, because I want to respect the time, we're each given a certain amount of time, I want you to please point out where we're at today with your department when it comes to being reactive and paying lots of fines for spills, etc., versus where we're at today, and then what this means for the future as far as us staying ahead of the curve and making sure that we're preventative and not reactive.
Good morning, Lisa Mowry, Acting Chief Financial Officer for the Bureau of Sanitation. When we compare ourselves nationally to the largest cities, the city we don't want to become is the city of Atlanta, because today its residents for a single-family residential home pay over $110 per month because they ignored their system, let it fall apart. They have a federal judge running their system now. It got so bad. To put us in perspective, even after 10 years of rate adjustments, assuming Atlanta doesn't go up at all, which they probably will, our residents would still be paying half of what Atlanta pays today. As far as the cost of the programs, one of the things we've certainly found, and I know the council members here that are involved in budget and finance and see the litigation and the claims come through, claims litigation, if we have to do a project on an emergency basis, it can cost up to 10 times as much as if it's a planned project that goes through the bid procedures. We've certainly made great inroads. Our emergency sewer repair program, as recently as a few years ago, we were spending $40 million a year on emergency repairs. We've got that down to less than $20 million now because of the increased number of projects we're doing in a planned fashion.
With regards to the cost of litigation versus, doing it a different way, we most recently, in the last, actually 7 years ago, we entered into a huge settlement agreement brought about because of legal action against the city by EPA, federal EPA, the Regional Water Quality Control Board, as well as environmental organizations. And that ended up in the settlement. But prior to that, in fact, many of the staff in sanitation had been inspired to become attorneys because we were spending more time in court than we were at the drafting table. But unfortunately, we had chosen to litigate in the past, and this settlement agreement was the last legal action and the last time in which we chose to go the litigation route. But that, in the end, came to cost us. Would have cost us upwards of $500 million if we had chosen to stay in litigation.
Thank you. We've got a long list. Ms. Perry, Mr. Alarcon, Mr. Rosendahl, Mr. Englander, and Mr. Reyes. Ms. Perry.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and to representatives from the department. We've had a number of discussions in a number of committees, and they've been very, very helpful. One thing that I think that is very important to demonstrate to the public is that there's no intention here to move people from special funded or grant funded positions back into general fund positions to be able to accomplish the work program that is proposed and that needs to be done. And so I'd like for you to speak a little bit about, I would like to speak a lot about the work program itself, how it breaks down by council district, where you feel you are in terms of sufficiency of staff, and the timelines that you believe you are able to complete this work, because I don't think we can do an increase without convincing and conveying to the public that we have X number of employees, we will get this work done for you by X date or X year, so that people have an expectation that this is not being done in a void or in a vacuum, and that there's no end in sight, and so that they're very, 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 very clear about where their potential increase will go, how it will be spent, and how soon they can expect to see the results therefrom.
Yes, Councilmember Perry, thank you. We wanted very much, as you have asked us to do, make it clear that we are not by any means proposing to increase any staff, not just in sanitation, but in all of the other departments that are part of this program. And we, in the last 3 years, have reduced the staffing levels by 240 positions. And in fact, now in this proposal, we are concurring with the CAO to further cut the staffing level by 25 more positions. So the proposed staffing level after this reduction of 25 will remain flat for the next 10 years based on our proposal. So none of this revenue is intended to be going toward an increase in staff.
Okay,
now,
so let's rephrase that. So you don't intend to increase your operating costs in the department. You don't intend to move people around into other positions. And do you feel that at this point you have sufficient staffing levels to be able to accommodate, get the work done in the time frames that you are going to propose and set forth for us today?
Yeah, we feel that is true in being able to adjust for an increasing workload. In this case, say on the design and construction side, the way that we do that is we have a good balance of city staff as well as outside consultant staff. So if there is an increase in staffing requirements, meaning design work, that would be done through consultant staff.
And just to clarify one thing, we have been in discussions with Bureau of Engineering about this. We're comfortable with the number of authorized positions. We do need to get the ones that are frozen unfrozen, which is within the budget amounts, in order to be able to complete the work.
Okay, now that is something that I think we need to have further discussion about. In order, if we move this forward, we have to move it forward as a complete package. And I also want to thank the work done in the Budget and Finance Committee and to Mr. Parks, because they were able to dig a lot deeper on the logistics of this and how this affects the budget and ensures that we actually get work done that needs to be done. Now, as far as the committee has recommendations, I don't want to speak about that. That's not my place. But I think with respect to the future hiring issues and comments made by the CAO, that's something that is, I think, much more appropriately held through the managed hiring process. So I would recommend that we not take positions on whether to freeze or unfreeze on that today. I think that is a process, it's a deliberative process that needs to be able, so if you back out of those positions that you seek, as you are now without those, do you have sufficient level of staffing to be able to accommodate the work that is proposed pursuant to this proposed rate increase?
The answer to that, Councilmember Perry, in complete honesty, is no. We have asked for positions to be unfrozen from the Managed Hiring Committee, not just now, but in the last year plus. And so, but you're absolutely right. That is the venue and the place where we need to make our case, working with the Managed Hiring Committee as to whether positions are to be unfrozen or not.
Mr. Haji Khalil?
Yeah, Councilman, I believe at the Budget and Finance Committee, under direction of the committee, I think the instructions were also to include us and continue to include us under the managed hiring process. But to speak about the staffing level, the 1235 positions that we have currently in our program, that is a reduction from the 1475 we had in the last 3 years. We actually have looked at efficiencies, reduced staff. However, the positions, the vacancies currently we have of 200 positions approximately are having an impact on our ability to respond, to maintain the system in a proactive manner. Just an example of sewers. We just had a meeting with our environmental, with the regulators, the EPA, the regional board, looked at the performance for the last year, and they've commented that we are actually operating skeleton level at minimum level, and we are risking a major compromise to our settlement agreement. But also the most important thing is having failures, having backups into businesses and homes that none of us want to have, because the impact of those on the people's dignity, on the people's business, and the people's on jobs everywhere is huge. So I think we will work very hard to ensure that every position that is fully utilized to its best. And I think we've done everything we have done already to cut the staff. We'll continue to work through the Managed Hiring Committee to fill as needed the most critical positions only.
Okay, Mr. President, I'll press my button again. I'm way over.
Thank you. Mr. Alarcon is our next speaker. And you're not way over. You get 6 minutes as well as the second opener. Mr. Alarcon.
Council members, we have to do this. There's no question about it. I want to commend the committee for the report, and I plan to support it. But I also think we need to paint a clear picture, because I think the worst thing we could do is give the public the impression that we are actually reducing the problem, when over the course of 10 years the problem is not going away. And so I want to go through a numerical assessment of what we're talking about here. We have 6,400 miles of water pipes. 2,100 miles are over 80 years old. what is the failure rate after 80 years?
You know, in terms of a percentage, Councilman, I can tell you that we have had 3 major catastrophic failures.
What is the failure rate? Just what is the failure rate?
Yeah.
Can we get a simple answer?
Enrique.
Yeah.
So, as part of our, usually the life of a sewer is 80 years.
80 years is the projected
Life of the
failure, life expectancy of the pipe. And we currently have 2,100 miles of pipes that are older than 80 years old.
That's correct.
We are, after the 10 years is over, we will have repaired 600 miles.
That's correct.
However, of the 5,800 that are remaining, more than 1,600 of them will have become more than 80 years old. Is that not correct?
In the next 10 years, after we do 600, about 300 miles will move into the 80 years. So out of the 600 that we've done, about 300 will eat into this.
I'm not talking about the 600. I'm talking about the 5,800. Out of those 5,800, an additional 1,600 approximately will become more than 80 years old.
Over the next 3 years,
So
yes.
what we're talking about, folks, is that we will continue to increase the maximum, the number of pipes that have met their maximum life expectancy of 80 years by 1,000 miles. So I support this, but I was quoted in the newspaper as saying we need to do a lot more. So I want you to prioritize this, particularly for those of you that aren't term limited, because in 5 years you're going to have a bigger problem than you have today. You're going to have more breakages of these pipes, even though we're doubling the rate. So I think that those of you who are going to be here for a while, those of you who plan on being mayor, you need to be very concerned about this. What I would like to ask the department is, did you apply for ARA funding for this program?
We did. We had over $100 million of applications.
And they all went down, right? Okay, so I think that all of us need to be aware that even though we're doubling the rate, we need to make this an absolute priority with any federal funding that is available to apply for that money as quickly as possible. It is a job stimulator. It is an absolute infrastructure need, and it is something that if not addressed, could continue to damage us in the future, and the cost for repair are 3 or 4 times more than the replacement cost. Is that not correct?
7 times.
Okay. So I just wanted to make that statement. I'm voting for this, but I want us to understand that this is not enough. We have a lot more work to do, and I hope those of you who remain after I'm gone will take care of that.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
As many of you know, when I first got into this job about 6 years ago, I was chair of Public Works for a couple of minutes until there was a restructuring around here. And it was brought to my attention then that our pipes needed to be replaced. Obviously, our sewer pipes are old, and they have to be replaced. Some folks wanted to push the 5-year plan. Others wanted to push the 10-year plan. I pushed toward the 10-year plan only because I didn't want the burden in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years to hit people as hard as the reality of the recession we're in, is basically where I came out on it. But also in committee, we talked about some capital expenditures of the first couple of 3 years so that we can front load some of that within that mix so that we can actually move forward with it. After that discussion, do you feel we're going to be able to do that?
Certainly. And the way that we intend to do that without increasing the fee on the ratepayers would be by shifting our cash to debt ratio so that we could issue more debt up front, be able to move up projects to the first couple of years, and then manage it over the 10-year period. So that's the other advantage of a 10-year plan, that it gives us that kind of flexibility.
Excellent. So we're on the right path. There are a lot of people here to speak in favor of it, obviously, because, look, it's tough. But if we don't replace them now, it just costs us more later, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I know I'm suffering the dual force main where the county didn't work with us, totally uncooperative, and I'm not pleased with the county supervisors. We worked out a plan for that dual force main, which is the sewer system going all the way from Malibu down to Hyperion, and all those towns along the way, like Little Santa Monica and Culver City and Marina del Rey, all benefit from it, but yet the county couldn't appreciate the strategy we have going forward. Where are we with that issue?
Joe. Yes, Councilman, and this is the example of a potential risk of this system failing, because it will have a huge impact on the community, on the environment, and the business in this area. As you're right, we have designed the project is ready to go. We were sued in court by the county through the EIR process. We're appealing right now, but to ensure that the public health is addressed, the environment is protected, we have done an alternative plan or a parallel plan to identify the weak points of this force main, the 50, 60-year-old pipe, and for us to take action to protect it while we are trying to resolve this issue. So I want to put your mind at ease that we are going through the process to comply with the court order to address the alignment issue. In the meantime, we are working very hard trying to identify the weak points in the force main and address that while we are dealing with the issue, because the most important thing for us is the public health and safety.
Terrific, and I agree with that, and I agree with all of what you're doing here today, and I will certainly vote for the 10-year plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Englander.
Okay, thank you. Morning. A couple things on this, and I know it's gone through several committees already, and a lot of discussion and comment. How many outside stakeholder meetings with neighborhood councils and communities and CBOs and how many of those have occurred?
Nearly 70.
70?
70.
70?
70. Yes, 70. It's the whole range of our stakeholders and customers. Council member from neighborhood councils, business organizations, community groups, and like you pointed out the last time, we did not include council offices in that outreach. But that was a total of nearly 70 feedback sessions, presentation sessions, and we were very pleased to have been supported by most of the organizations, and the feedback was generally positive.
And their overall recommendation was the 5-year plan or the 10-year plan?
We actually presented both.
You presented both, but
yes.
what was the stronger, where was the support? Where did people tend to lean towards when they heard all of the issues, all of the objectives? What was the feedback?
Of the two, the inclination would have been toward the 10-year.
Okay. And with that, and going out, and I touched on this a little bit in committee, and there was a number of things that people didn't understand how their sewer charge worked, how they were billed for the fees. Most people, in fact, don't understand that. And as I went out there and talked to folks, they were surprised to learn that it's simply a calculation during the lowest part of the year, in terms of the wettest part of the year, if you will. And the calculation is based on when those are the lowest, and it's a percentage of that's billed on your DWP bill. And there are many efforts you can make internally to reduce that on your own. And so I wanted to just capture on the Budget and Finance Committee, there was the final report that's before us, item J, which was added on the loan program. And if you can hold my time, because there's a couple just things that have to be pointed out, or I'll push the button again if we run out. But on item J, if you can, I want to speak to the loan program and how that's going to work, because that's something new that we've never had in place, from my understanding, before, to make it easier for people to connect that are either on septic tanks or have never been able to connect to the sewer system, and there's mandates now that require them to do that. Also on item K, colleagues, I want to point out there's something new here that I want to make sure you're aware of. I brought this up in committee, that we would implement a requirement that all new single-family homes in the city of Los Angeles be required to have private sub-meters also installed at the time of construction. And then I'll push my time again to explain some of those details and why the Bureau and the committee thought it was a good idea to include that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Englander. Did you want to respond to anything, or we'll wait till... Did you want any responses to that right now, or are you going to wait? You're just pointing it out. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to point it out and then
okay.
get into it.
Mr. Reyes.
Well, first, I want to thank you for your hard work, and I know these are not the best times to be increasing fees, but in the light of what we're at economically, in Department of Water and Power, we have these lifelines. We look at low-income families and people like that. Could you address that in terms of, do we have some kind of a safety valve mechanism for people who are at that stage and don't want to lose their homes, but they can't afford? I mean, is there a way to look at that?
Yes, Council Member. The Clean Water Program, this program, and the sewer service charge fee has a subsidy of 31% for low-income customers. And it's a subsidy that is borne by the other ratepayers. So it's distributed as part of the total fee. And our calculation will include what that amount of total subsidy is, and then it's distributed. And so that will continue. In fact, one of our recommendations is to adjust what that level of subsidy is so that we can pair it to the actual total dollar amount. So that will continue as part of the fee structure.
And in the spirit of looking at the city from a, how can I put this? We look at opportunity to expand our revenue base. And we look at our assets, we look at our land. Not only do we look at our operations, but how we handle our assets. So we have incredible pieces of land that are not producing or could be more productive. When we look at their inherent value given their position from a real estate point of view. So the notion of mixed use, doubling up different uses, different functions, kind of what we're experimenting with right now around the Avenue 26 area. Does that have a dollar value? Are we able to make certain assumptions that say if we could build out our facility where we maybe only use 2 levels or 3 levels, but we can rent out or lease 4 or 5 levels, that generates income for our department, helps subsidize our needs. Are we putting ourselves in that place? I know that takes a cultural shift because that means we have to work with different departments and we have to actually share decision making, how we use our lots. And sometimes we don't want to let go. I understand that, but getting past that, are we looking at ourselves from a different point of view to create revenue? And I think I know the answer, but I need to ask it because I want to know how you're approaching it.
Yes, I was just waiting for the opportunity to reply back to that. And yes, we, as you have said, need to shift our thinking. This is a utility business, this wastewater business, and we got to utilize it ultimately to the benefit of the ratepayers. Utilizing our assets with synergy with other common uses. Our lots, for example, much as is the case for this one property in which if we have a need for office space and we have the ability to make it so that we can lease out some office space, bring revenue to the fund, ultimately reducing the total cost to the ratepayer. We need to be able to do that. We have to be compelled to do that. But I'll give you an example of how we have shifted also in other areas. Large construction projects, such as, say, the MTA projects, and other not so large but still significant. At some point, they may need a way of being able to handle the groundwater that they encounter while they're in construction. In the past, we would have turned away and said, well, that's your problem. What we have done now, turned that into a business opportunity because we provide them an option to pump their groundwater into the sewer system. We can treat it to be in full compliance with the environmental regulations. It saves them an awful lot of money, and it makes development projects move forward. Brings revenue to us. So that's a way in which in the last 5 years, certainly in the last 3 years, we have turned our mindset to use this system as a business asset to the benefit of the ratepayers.
And just one last point, because I'm over my time, is if we can just push to a point where we can share parking spaces between departments. If you got 4 or 5 departments that are adjacent to each other, it makes no sense to have individual parking lots. We could share one parking lot and open up all that other parking space for development and investment that allows for us to create revenue for the city. I know we're looking at it, but I need to put that on the table once again on the record, because I know we're going in that direction, but I appreciate your work in that regard.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. Mr. Zine.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to acknowledge your activities on Measure O when that measure passed by over 70%. I guess that money is all used up?
Yeah, overly subscribed.
Overly subscribed.
Yeah.
So that was designed for the stormwater project?
That's correct.
How much was that?
$500 million.
And that's nearly gone?
Yes.
Okay. The concern I have with this, and it's amazing that you went out to 70-plus groups, and I assume this chamber would be packed with people concerned and protesting and objecting and saying, how can we afford this at this economic time? You didn't get resistance from the ratepayers of Los Angeles on this proposal?
You know, we did not, but the one person who was at most of those sessions is Lisa. So, Lisa, please speak to...
So you put Lisa on the firing line?
No, because, you know, I will be...
Okay.
Yeah, I think out of the 70, I've probably been to about half of them personally and have seen the reports back on the other. We have, at some of the meetings, you know, one thing that was very important, as Councilmember Englander said, it was a great opportunity to explain to people how their bills were calculated. Once people heard that, they realized they've got some control over the bill by how they use water. That made them a lot more comfortable because they felt there's something I can do to help mitigate this increase that they had heard about. We did have some folks, for instance, who said, what can you do to keep it low for the next couple of years because things are really bad? That's one of the things the 10-year plan addresses. By stretching it out, we were able to keep the adjustments in the first years as low as possible. What people were most struck with, however, was when we talked about our replacement cycle that we're budgeted at this year. We would only be replacing assets once every 168 years. Twice the life of a sewer, 5 or 6 times the life of the assets at the treatment plant. And that really resonated with them, and they got very concerned about that. In fact, we had one person at one of these meetings who said, 10 years isn't long enough. You should be doing something for 20 or 30 years because the need isn't going to end.
Well, see, the problem is we've got the streets that aren't paved, the potholes, the sidewalks that are uprooting, causing us liability. The Department of Water and Power has the water system where they need to replace pipes. And I know it's an old city. 230 years ago, the city was established, and things don't last forever. The problem is when people look at this on their bill and that sewer and sanitation charge, if you're spending a little bit of money bringing the water in, it's costing you so much to dispose of it, and that's one of the issues. When I look at the dollars you're talking, $30 a month, I live by myself, and I don't use a whole lot of water, and my bill on that sewer and sanitation charge is much higher than $30 a month for a single person in a house with, you know, other than the sprinkler system that goes on a couple times a week. So I think that rate is low. It's going to hurt a lot of people. That's my concern. But then Water and Power comes in here, and they need a rate increase because they have to replace the pipes that are breaking all over the city. Somehow, we need to balance it, at the same time continue providing the services and make it affordable. The other question I had, that's basically a comment, is the folks that have septic tanks, we're going to provide a program so they can convert over to the sewer system, which I know is very expensive. We're giving them an incentive to convert to the sewer system to save them money. Meanwhile, the other ratepayers are going to be paying for that. How many folks do we have on the septic tanks in the city of Los Angeles that you'd like to convert over?
We have about 15,000.
How many?
15,000 septic systems.
Mostly in the valley?
A lot of them in the valley, but not only in the valley.
So if those folks convert over, half of them, well, how much is that going to cost out of this? Because we're going to give them an incentive to hook up to the sewer system, which now is their cost, their expense. to hook up if they wish to hook up, or they tear down an old house and they want to build a new house, they've got to hook up to the sewer system. There's money that we're going to be giving an incentive for people to hook up from a septic tank to the system, which is going to impact people like me that are already on the system. How much are we going to apply to the septic tanks, folks, to give them some kind of a and I don't know if people are aware of that, but you're offering them an incentive.
A loan.
We're going to be paying for that.
It's half a percentage point that we are earmarking for the loan program. But keep in mind that once they convert,
they'll be getting paid.
They become ratepayers.
Yeah, I know.
Which benefit everybody.
Well, it'll benefit us, but it'll hurt them. Because right now they're not paying for that disposal with the septic tank. Whatever water goes in, they're paying for. They're not paying for the sewer and sanitation charge. They're saving a lot of money. This is going to cost them money. At the same time, we're giving them motivation and giving them financial incentive. Now, what kind of incentive are we giving them?
It's your last question, I would venture to say, Councilman, I would venture to say...
How did you get up there?
I would venture to say that a good number, if not a majority of the folks who are in the septic system would rather be in the sewer system.
What does it cost to convert?
It could be up to $100,000 depending on the distance of the connection.
And how much are we going to give them? What are we going to give them? If it's going to cost them
$100,000, the full amount. The idea is to give them a loan. It's a loan. It's not a giveaway. It's a loan.
And it's
with
a loan.
Interest.
It's not a grant. We're not giving them money. We're giving them an opportunity to finance the project so that they can get to it. Next speaker is...
Okay, I'll be back.
Yes. Push your button again. Councilmember Garcetti.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, colleagues, for the discussion, and thank you to the Bureau. You know, the story of governance today and of not just our city, but certainly our state and many parts of our country is all about deferred maintenance. That because people sometimes won't have the courage to stand up and tell the truth, it's much more politically easy, especially in an era of term limits, to say, oh, leave it to the next person. We have deferred billions upon billions, hundreds of billions of dollars. Actually, when you look at it nationwide, it's over $1 trillion worth of infrastructure maintenance. That's our roads, that's our libraries, that's our sewer lines, that's our storm drains. You know, when Councilmember Englander stands up and very articulately speaks about the conditions of our streets, for instance, this was the first year we didn't go backwards in terms of the conditions of our streets since World War II. Now, we can celebrate that, but because we went from a 62 to a 63 out of 100 is not something to celebrate when we drive the streets of L.A. and we see the damage that it causes to our axles. The myth that somehow if we pay up front, we're paying more than if we don't pay is just that, a myth. We know that the long-term cost of living cheaply in the short term is much more than taking care of things. Anybody who's ever owned a home, anybody who's ever run a business, anybody who's ever been in charge of a building knows that. Just take your own car. If you don't want to wash it ever, go for it. But when you sell that thing, it ain't going to get the price that it should if you would just have washed it every so often. And so when we look at what we are looking at here today, this is an important building of, I believe, a change of culture in a bureau, in a department, and in a city. And we do have some speakers at the end of my comments. I'd like to open up just for a minute each. I think it's 9 speakers with their indulgence of understanding that we had a public hearing, just a minute each, because we do have business leaders, environmental leaders, community leaders who support this. And it's a rare day when people come here and say, please raise our rates. But it's in our own interest. It saves us money. It saves us time. And it improves, at the end of the day, the quality of our life here. Prop O was a very important turning point. I remember when our 16th council member, Ron Deaton, our CLA, once said to me, nobody will ever vote for increasing their own taxes to pay for stormwater improvement. But when we told people this will affect the quality of the water you drink, what happens in our bay, in our rivers, in our lake, today I'm going to go put on my boots and go through Echo Park Lake, which is drained right now, and check out what the people's money is doing to make sure that that body of water, which was a source of pollution, will become a source of nature again. We know that this is money well spent. We used to have sewers, and we still do, although we've done a good job of making it much, much better, that used to overflow because they were so old, go right into our storm drains, and the days which it rains, which should have cleaned up our city, instead were the days you couldn't go to the beach, because unless you wanted to have raw sewage swimming along with you, you shouldn't be there. So we have, and I'll close on this, to Mr. Zine's point, I get that as well, Ms. Perry, myself, Mr. Smith when he's here, others, when we looked at things like the rate increase at DWP, part of it is, even when we know we need to do things and move forward, we need to trust the people who are doing it. And I trust you. I trust this department, because of the work that you have done, and the people of Los Angeles should trust you as well. It's a well-run department. There's not waste, fraud, or abuse in the department. Quite the contrary. It's cutting edge for this country. It's shown other cities how to do it right, and because of that, I urge you, colleagues, to make this investment to save us money in the long term and to make sure that we continue to have the cleanest system that we can in this city for our water.
Thank you, Council President Garcetti. It was recommended or asked that we go to public comment, 1 minute apiece. I would like to point out, thank you for complimenting our department, Councilmember Garcetti. They are an award-winning department, but I want to thank them. They're mostly engineers, so they're not going to win any Academy Awards. We don't want acting. We just want people to just do the right thing, and they've been doing a tremendous job. Actually, international and national and regional awards to our Department of Sanitation, so I just want to point that out. Our first speaker is Wes May.
Good morning, President Garcetti and council members. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm Wes May. I represent the Engineering Contractors Association, and we strongly recommend adoption of the sewer service rate increase. This is a critically needed action that will help alleviate water quality issues and put LA residents back to work. This measure will certainly create jobs and put many of our members back to work. The Engineering Contractors Association and its 224 member companies employ over 2,200 workers and represent combined households of 7,700 people that live and work in LA or the greater LA area. We are heavy underground contractors that perform sewer and water installation and repair. We are in support of this measure because it is a responsible long-term way to guarantee the success of sewer infrastructure repair. We know that planned preventive maintenance is much less costly than emergency unscheduled maintenance. This measure will also guarantee success of hitting the 30% local hire requirement, which our contractors will exceed. It will also further increase sewer rehabilitation. As I stated before, this is a desperately needed fix that will help alleviate water quality issues and put LA residents back to work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Zuri Naxalian is our next speaker, and after Zuri will be Mark Gold.
Good morning. On behalf of the Los Angeles Business Council, I'm here to recognize the good job the Bureau of Sanitation has done to explain the reasons for its proposed wastewater fee increase. While we realize that some proposed city fee increases are discretionary, it is clear that this one is not. The fee increase is needed to fund critical improvements to the city's aging wastewater system. We urge you to support the increase as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Gold of Heal the Bay. After that is Ron Miller from the Building Trades.
Morning. My name is Mark Gold, and I'm president of the environmental group Heal the Bay. And first off, I just want to say that was about the most sophisticated discussion I have ever seen in the City Council over the last 25 years on this topic. So I think congratulations to Council, congratulations to the Bureau of Sanitation, who's clearly done their homework in working with Council and getting them all the facts that they need. Clearly, Heal the Bay strongly supports the Bureau of Sanitation recommendation. We all remember the days of how things used to be in the 80s. Where we literally had a dead zone in the middle of Santa Monica Bay, and Hyperion was an embarrassment. And we literally had days on end where Santa Monica Bay, tens of miles, would be closed at a time. Those days are long over. The days of people walking to school and having to go through raw sewage in the streets, we remember those days in the 90s. Those days are over. We have a Bureau of Sanitation that has been one of the most forward-thinking, progressive, and successful bureaus of sanitation in the country. You see one award after the other coming nationally for that effort. They're doing things right. They're working with the public to come up with the recommendations. I've personally reviewed each and every one of the projects that they're recommending to move forward. This is the basic stuff that needs to move forward to protect public health, protect the environment. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Gold. Ron Miller is next. After that is Luis Arida.
Good morning, Council. I'm Ron Miller with the LA Orange County Building Trades. I represent 140,000 craftsmen and women. Before I came to work for the Building Trades in January, I was a plumber. 30 years as a plumber. The early 90s, I worked out at the Hyperion on all the new work. But all that new work that we did is 20 years old. And with the technology changes, environmental changes, It's very important that we keep up with the infrastructure of the city sewer and the water systems. So this is a good proposal. It helps the city maybe maintain or keep a little bit ahead. There's still more to do, but I urge you to vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Luis Orita is next. After that is Samuel Unger.
Good morning, council members. My name is Luis Orita. I'm with IBEW Local 11. I represent electricians that work in LA City and all of LA County, for that matter. I'll keep my comments brief. I wanted to thank the Budget and Finance Committee for bringing this to full council. It's overdue. The city desperately needs to replace and maintain its sewer maintenance infrastructure. And the Bureau's plan is clearly the best way to go. Not to mention that Angelenos desperately need the jobs that may be saved and created going forward with this plan. So for IBEW, we urge you to approve this measure, and I'm also a city resident, and I want you to raise my rates. Thank you.
To save money in the future, right? Yes. Right, okay. Samuel Unger is our next speaker. After that is Jessica Duboff.
Good morning, President Garcetti and members of the City Council. My name is Samuel Unger, and I'm the Executive Officer for the California Regional Water Quality Control Board. And I'm reluctantly say that I'm the bearer of some of the standards that Mr. Cardenas was speaking about earlier today, but I'm also very pleased to support the funding of the initiative, as is my board. I'm well familiar with the city system and with the Bureau of Sanitation personnel. I was the board's representative to the negotiations that happened 10 years ago that resulted in the collection system settlement agreement, by which the board put forth, the city put forth, the Bureau of Sanitation put forth a plan of prioritization, inspections, planning, repair, and replacement that within 7 years has resulted in the reduction of spills by 86%. That's a remarkable achievement, and as an engineer, and I think all the engineers who were involved in those negotiations were wondering whether that could be done, and the Bureau of Sanitation's plan has come to fruition. So with that, I support the funding initiative.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Jessica Duboff is our next speaker. After that is Liz Croson.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Duboff. I'm here on behalf of the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. I'm here to express our support for the vision and objectives of the Bureau's Clean Water Program. Investing in our city's aging infrastructure is vital to keeping Los Angeles a livable and economically competitive area. We commend the Bureau for the strides they have made in the last decade to reduce sewer overflows and increase department efficiencies, but we agree with the need to commit to further investment. While we endorse the goals of this program, the Chamber does have reservations about immediate sharp increases. Thus, we appreciate the concept of a 10-year plan with graduated increases so that businesses can budget accordingly for the long term. I'd like to thank the staff at the Bureau for their extensive outreach efforts. We look forward to continuing to work with the Department and the Council to ensure Los Angeles takes the challenging but necessary steps to protect the safety and economic vitality of our residents and businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz Croson is our next speaker, Santa Monica Baykeeper. After that is Arnold Sachs.
Good morning. My name is Liz Croson. I'm the Executive Director for Santa Monica Baykeeper and a ratepayer of Los Angeles. Baykeeper is a community-based environmental nonprofit that works to protect and restore the waterways throughout Los Angeles and support the communities throughout the county. Baykeeper supports the city's Clean Water Program rate proposal. We support a 10-year financial plan, and this is exactly what LA needs to maintain its collection and treatment system that protects public health and the environment and will actually solidify the city's long-term commitment. In 1998, Baykeeper was one of those environmental groups that sued the city of Los Angeles. After negotiations, we reached a settlement agreement that has a final compliance deadline of 2014. What we've seen under that consent decree is an impressive amount of work from the Bureau of Sanitation that has increased the maintenance and the investment into our system and made Los Angeles a safer and more environmentally conscious community. I am very encouraged by the discussion here today, and I urge you to support this proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your work. Arnold Sachs is our next speaker. Then we have Rachel Ann Levy.
Yes, thank you. Good morning again, Arnold Sachs. At the risk of being wrong again, at the beginning of the discussion, one of the gentlemen mentioned some of the costs incurred by other cities, San Francisco, San Diego, Santa Monica, versus the cost of L.A. Well, the question I have actually, because it wasn't addressed by anybody here at the council, and it occurred in the same article that quoted Mr. Alicon, was that when the Bureau of Sanitation charges the customer, the money actually goes on a DWP bill. So do the other cities that were quoted in this discussion, do those people get charged on their DWP bill? Do they have a private Department of Water and Power? Because that's just a pass-through. And it might be my imagination, but the DWP certainly wouldn't be one of the standard bearers for open and transparent government. It's not even it's just a proprietary department, so it's not bound by financial policies of the city of LA. So maybe you should discuss getting the money out of the DWP first and then putting it to use for public infrastructure.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rachel Ann Levy, and then after that is Mimi Soto.
Good morning. My name is Rachel Ann Levy, representing the LAX Coastal Area Chamber of Commerce. The LAX Coastal Area Chamber of Commerce, representing over 550 businesses and 15,000 local employees, is in strong favor of this rate increase. The wastewater system is an essential part of the city's infrastructure, and the Bureau of Sanitation does an excellent job at maintaining it. The Bureau is asking the Council to approve a fee increase to make much-needed improvements and upgrades to the system. As a business organization, we are generally extremely wary of fee increases. In this case, however, we understand the need for it in order to be as cautious and proactive as possible. A potential sanitation catastrophe down the line will be more detrimental to our local economy than a current rate increase. For this reason, the LAX Coastal Area Chamber of Commerce has submitted a letter in strong support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mimi Soto is our next speaker, and then Simboa Wright. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Good morning. My name is Mimi, and I'm with SEIU Local 721. We represent the wastewater workers for the City of Los Angeles, and we want to let you know that we support and encourage the rate increase. The Bureau is one of the most responsible departments that we've worked with. We've had extensive conversations in our joint labor management regarding the increase, and it's really impressive on how the department they take labor into consideration along with their responsibility to the city of Los Angeles and being fiscally responsible. And again, we just want to say we support it. It's a great department. It's a responsible department. And they have a lot of foresight, and they're doing the responsible thing. I also live in the city of Los Angeles, Council District 12, Councilman Englander's a constituent, and I say, I'd rather, pay some money now to save it later. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Simboa Wright is our last speaker for our public comment cards. Good morning, Simboa.
Morning. Simboa Wright. I am a ratepayer for the city, of course, and I am a wastewater worker. I am here to urge you to support this. We have the largest sewer system in the United States, and it's very important because we don't want to go backwards. We want to go forward. Many years ago, we had spills, and the spills are down. We're working hard. And as a ratepayer, like I said, we don't want to go backwards. So I urge you to support this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wright. We'll go back to council members. Our next speaker is Mr. Englander.
Thank you. And you all here heard on the record that Mr. Garcetti said that he was going to wash all of our cars, I think is what I heard him say last. These seem like big increases, and I know we're talking about large percentages, but what you've explained is it roughly might amount to about $2 to start off. With that, are there things the average person can easily do to offset that cost with a savings through conservation means? Are there simple things that aren't complicated that they don't have to go out and install in their home to save this money? And are those things being sent out? Are people being informed and educated on what those programs and opportunities are?
If
you can report on that.
Absolutely. That's been one of the focal points as we've been going out to the neighborhood councils, as well as an annual mailer we send out to everyone to tell them how to reduce their sewer service charge. One of the main keys is making sure people know what time of year the sewer service charge is based on. It's not based on year-round. The irrigation water you use during the summer doesn't have any impact on your sewer service charge. So what we encourage people to do is look at the winter period, find one of your billing cycles that you know is going to be fully within the winter period.
Let me ask you this only because
Sure.
the clock, I know, I don't want to push my button yet again, so I want to go through this as quickly as I could, unless I need to. The question on that outreach and education, which I think is critical. I brought it up at the committee. I asked that it be part of the committee report. It was not included for whatever reason, to say that, to show further outreach and education programs beyond just billing inserts on what things people can do, whether it's working with neighborhood councils to outreach that effort, creating quick fact sheets. One of the things that I've done recently with DWP, and I'd like to do with the Bureau, is every week we ask the DWP to submit for our newsletter, which goes out to 40,000 people every Friday, tips on how they can reduce, reuse, recycle, things they can do to lower their DWP bill. We'd like to get those kind of tips from sanitation. I'd like those included with all council members' newsletters, things like that as well, that we can share that. On the sub-meter part, that's a significant savings. It's a one-time installation with a rebate from DWP. And that's why it was included in the program, in this program, to insist that all new construction have that.
Yes.
But to explain the program further to folks, I think is critical. A lot of people shied away from sub-meters for many years because of the billing problems. There was a lot of billing problems with DWP, where if you got on a sub-meter, you used to get two bills. Yeah. You'd get your primary bill and your sub-meter bill, and then you would pay both of them separately. And oftentimes, the Department of Water and Power would actually take both those checks and credit them against your primary bill, and you'd have a credit balance, and then the next month or a few weeks later, you'd get a delinquency notice and a threat letter to shut off your water and power, even though you had a credit balance on one and a negative balance on another. It's finally on one bill. And so now that sanitation and the Bureau has worked very closely with DWP to fix that problem, and I want to compliment you on that. We need to promote what the sub-meter does, how it works, the fact that you don't pay sewer sanitation charges, you don't pay those on if you have a sub-meter, on any water outside of the house. You only pay for water inside the house. Is that correct?
That's correct, and we need to do a better job, Councilmember Englander, as you just said, about demystifying the whole sub-meter and how it really is just a complete benefit of it separates the domestic use of water, which is the water that is paid for on the sewer service charge, from the irrigation water, and it takes away the guesswork that sometimes people believe is involved in determining the actual charge. So it's a far more accurate way of billing.
And then just one last thing real quick. For the phone calls from the constituents that we've been getting, we tell them if they do simple things like when they're washing their hair in the shower or brushing their teeth, they shut the water off while they're doing those things. They shut the water off while they're doing the dishes and turn it back on to rinse. They won't even see the increase if they do those few simple things around the house. They won't even feel it. Is that correct?
Water conservation obviously helps both on the DWP side and on the sanitation side. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Dennis Pizine.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl, and I don't have to shut the water off when we wash our hair, so we're conservative with that. You like that?
Use a wipe, right?
I got to give you credit. You folks have done your homework. You've definitely gone out there and convinced the people that this is a necessary program for the city, and I want to acknowledge Hilda Bay. I received an award from them a number of years ago with Mayor Hahn at the time because we're concerned about it. When we talk about the septic tanks, there's an incentive program and there's a loan program, and they're going to have to pay that back, and hopefully we'll get that money back. Why can't we do for the folks that have the desire to have a sub-meter, and I understand they're very expensive to install, why can't we do an incentive program for the sub-meters the same way with the large parcels that they have in parts of the city? You know, the west side doesn't have the heat that the valley has. The west side is a lot cooler temperature. The valley, it's not uncommon to get 100+ degrees. A lot of vegetation. why can't we put together, because people have contacted me about the sub-meter program, say it's too expensive, and if they put that in, they'd obviously save on their bills. Why can't we incentivize them to do something, and it'd be a loan program as you have with the septic tanks, but to give them an incentive, and that will help reduce the cost to them, at the same time giving them something that obviously is expensive to install. What do you think about that?
We can certainly commit to that, Councilman. In fact, we know that DWP has an incentive or a rebate for sub-meters, and if that is not adequate or does not go all the way, we would then supplement it by doing whatever is missing. But
I think that would assist the folks in the area, especially the Valley, which I represent, many of my colleagues, where people are going to be complaining, especially folks on Social Security. They're getting, I think, a $40 in January, a $40 increase on their Social Security check. It'll go to pay for the additional cost. But if we could incentivize it, and with the sub-meter, all that water that goes in the garden, they're not charged for. Currently, they're charged because it's all about what the bill shows. So if we could put that in, I would support this measure, because I wasn't originally going to support it just because of the cost. And I think if we can reduce that cost to the consumer, especially the folks I represent, I think it'll be a sellable project. But again, I want to commend you for not having this chamber filled with people complaining about not knowing and not being aware. You've definitely sold the program, and hopefully, as Mr. Alarcon said, this is partial of what we need to do. Measure O was partial of what we need to do, and it's an aging infrastructure. And the water and power system, the sanitation system, and I've been to China, and I tell you, they need a sanitation department like we have, because the water is so polluted. It's terrible, and that's what happens when you don't maintain the system. So congratulations to you, gentlemen. I know there's a big conference going on right now in the city of LA regarding this nationwide or maybe worldwide, so we're benefiting with that also. How many? 20,000 folks here, and I know you gentlemen were there last night. I was there last night for a time, but it's a huge issue for the environment. It's a huge issue for lifestyle. It's a huge issue for health and safety. So again, congratulations, but let's think about that sub-meter program for those areas that have the high temperatures. Help those folks save on their bills. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you very much. It's really nice when somebody from the public actually alludes to the idea that we're somewhat intelligent. So that was a very nice comment. Or maybe they were talking about you. But anyway, it's really important for us to understand, once again, that this is something that no one enjoys. No one enjoys paying higher fees. No one enjoys raising the fees. But the fact of the matter is, as Councilmember Alarcon pointed out, this is still modest in the grand scheme of the responsibilities of an aging infrastructure, where you have, for example, pipes that are currently 80 years old, and by the time we get through these 600 miles of pipes, we're going to have more 80-plus-year-old pipes 10 years from now. So I think that where we drew the line here is very modest, but it's still very responsible. And with this, we're going to be able to stay in front of most problems rather than being behind the problems. And I wanted to point out that it's never a good time to increase fees. When is it? However, at the same time, it's never, ever a good time to fix problems in an emergency situation. It costs at the minimum 4 to 5 times as much to fix something in an emergency situation if it's small. Sometimes we have tremendous breakages that cost us as much as 100 times. Ladies and gentlemen, that means that if, for example, if we have a problem that would have cost us $500,000 to fix it ahead of time, like we're doing better today, with these fees we can do that. Without these fee increases, we would be looking at a $500,000 problem potentially costing us $25 million to fix that one problem. That's ridiculous. That's just something that is actually unconscionable. That's the way things were in the past. That's not the way things are going to be currently and into the future. I would like to make a clarification and modification on the report on as far as A, B, C, D, E, F, G, going to paragraph I, and it reads, identify with the assistance of the CAO 25 vacant sanitation positions in the Clean Water Program for deletion as part of the 2012-2013 budget process. That's something that the department agreed that they could still work with that. I'd like to change it the first sentence to identify with the assistance of the CEO 25 vacant positions in the Clean Water Program. Okay, so that's deleting the word sanitation, but specifically looking at the Clean Water Program and adhering to that, those 25 positions. In addition to that, members, you'll see in front of you item 12A. This is something that appropriately is something we've been thinking about for a long time, on trying to make sure that we respect and appreciate some of our biggest users, but our biggest responsible users. So 12A actually speaks to the responsibility of large users of our water and power, and in this case sanitation, where they have actually implemented best practices and improved pre-treatment processes, etc., and that the department within 30 days get back to this council and report to us as to what kind of progress we can make in improving a much more fair system of that particular way in which we charge those customers. So with that, I'd like to ask that we approve the report as modified, and then also item 12A included in our vote. Thank you.
All right. Is there a second for that?
You have a second? I think Mitching.
I'll second that. Yeah, we got a second. Thank you, Mr. Wesson. All right. Let's go ahead and then open the roll then on the vote as amended. Friendly amendment, no objection. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is approved. Congratulations. Spend it well.
Appreciate it.
Next item called special, please.
Mr. President, that brings us to item 13, called special by Councilmember Reyes. I might note that motion 13A has been distributed and is now before Council for its consideration as well.
Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. I ask the Planning Department to come to the center table. Colleagues, I want to thank the Arts Committee for joining us, Arts, Parks, and Neighborhoods, for joining us in this issue of addressing the need to create an environment so that we can bring back the murals and create parameters for which we can establish murals. Now, technically, as Chair of Plum, I was the impression that this was not going to come to Council, that it was going to go back to the departments, to City Attorney, so they can work it, so that then once they're done with the draft, it comes back to committee and then bring it to Council. But it ended up here now. I want to respect the fact that some of our constituents, because of the announcement, were invited to be here, and I think we should allow them to be heard. That there's also an amendment, A, that was part of the original instructions, but did not make it to the documents that we had established. So thank you, Councilman. We started to make sure it gets included. It's in there now. So for the sake of the public and making sure that we are being very transparent what this means, Mr. Blackman, if you can just, and Mr. Rouse, if you can just give us a thumbnail sketch of what we're doing. My hope, colleague, is that we send it back to committee, because we're not ready. We can take the amendments and take it back to where it needs to be, because we do have the bigger picture of the sign ordinance that we still need to work on. This issue is attached to that dynamic, and so that they have to be lined up to make sure we're consistent with the law. So, Mr. Blackman, just give us a quick summary.
Absolutely. Tanner Blackman, City Planning. Last week on October 12th, the joint Plum and APN committee met on the murals issue. There are, as many of you know, several council motions over the last few years and several meetings. And this meeting last week was basically to receive a report back from the Cultural Affairs Department and the City Planning Department. I presented on behalf of City Planning, and the Cultural Affairs presented as well. And it was basically to sort of boil down the two main policy issues, which are the goals of both preserving and protecting the existing murals in our city, and then to create a new permitting system to enable new murals moving forward. I presented on a few different approaches for those goals, and the joint committee decided essentially to I said split the baby, to on part of it move forward with having city planning draft an ordinance in consultation with the relevant departments, but then also ask for a report back on the one component of it. So I'm happy to move forward and start drafting that language and workshopping it with the public, etc., as you wish.
Thank you. So I want to thank Councilman Krikorian because we shared our chair roles there for a moment in time. We actually switched chairs. So I want to thank him for that. And with that, colleagues, we'll go to public comment. And let's start questions and issues that want to be raised by my colleagues.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Huizar.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank our chairs of the two respective committees for bringing this issue forward. In my district, we've been concerned about the inability for us to preserve the murals we have and put up new murals, and also given that my district has had the most number of murals and where probably the mural movement started in the 60s and 70s, there's been a lot of interest in making sure that we continue to promote public spaces and have art available to all without walls. As we saw what happened in the city because of our sign litigation, there was a moratorium, if you want to call it that, on putting up more murals, but yet we saw huge interest in having people being able to put up murals and continue the tradition that started here in Los Angeles. I certainly support murals. I grew up in Boyle Heights in Estrada Court, so you have a number of murals around there, and it reminded me of the beautiful culture we have that we often don't see in our textbooks. It reminded me of the struggles our community had gone through in the fight for education, for representation, for identity. And I want to make sure that we continue to provide those opportunities not only for our young people to see these beautiful murals, but also to have our artists continue to express and show their talents and skills throughout the city of Los Angeles. I think this is a very important item for us to move on. And I want to thank the Cultural Affairs Department for moving forward, providing good data, providing information we needed, hosting many public meetings. I also want to thank the Planning Department for the tremendous job you did with grappling with difficult legal issues. It was not only a good way of looking at this as a planning issue, but also looking at it from the legal perspective of what can be done given the moratorium and all the sign issues involved. You came up with some very good options. For those of you who are more interested in seeing, we have that outlined in the report that will go back to committee. But I would suggest you look at that because I think it's a very innovative way to come up with a solution that many wanted to see. So thank you for that. I did submit an amending motion that will go back with this report to committee. It was two instructions that we gave in committee that unfortunately didn't make the report. One is to instruct the Planning Department to consider using the City Attorney's Administrative Code Enforcement Program to address murals in the new ordinance that may be non-compliant with the city's ordinance as an administrative rather than a criminal process. I gave the example of Assumption School in my district, a Catholic school, put up a mural of kids reading books. I mean, what could be, the whole community loved it. Unfortunately, it was done at this time that these murals were not permitted, but rather than issue them a citation and have the school go through a criminal process, an administrative procedure, I think would be much more appropriate. Secondly, it instructs the City Attorney and Planning Department to draft the ordinance to allow for the grandfathering of murals. As of the date of the adoption of the ordinance, there's a 5 window here in the solutions that came up that we would ask ourselves, well, what do we do with the murals that went up at this time? I think it would be a lot more appropriate to start it as the adoption of the ordinance, and hopefully you could look at those 2 instructions in the committee process and include it in your final report and ordinance. But again, much kudos to you. You guys did a wonderful job. And to the arts community, I know we've heard it for many, many years, the frustration. I think some relief is coming, and I know the chairs of these committees are working diligently to make sure this comes to the full council as soon as possible. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl.
Mr. President, good morning. As you know, I had put in a motion that talks about dealing with murals from my vantage point, and frankly, in Venice, we have murals all over the place, and Judy Baca and Emily Winters and others. But my motion said, relative, and Mr. Reyes seconded, to instructing the City Planning Department with the assistance of the DCA and Department of Building and Safety and in consultation with City Attorney to prepare and present an ordinance to define murals as something other than signs and establish a citywide program for permitting murals. So that, thank you. And that will be part of the process as we go forward, right?
Absolutely. That motion was sort of wrapped into the several outstanding motions that have been since at least 2008 on this issue. And I appreciate it because it adds some specific direction in it, and we're working on towards that.
Great, because my folks are very committed to that, and so am I, obviously. And also, yesterday I went before the Plum Committee, and it was a nice moment for me to speak. My constituents were there on the whole signage issue, which, you know, there's a difference between a signage and a mural. One is art and one is marketing, okay? I'm furious at the city of Santa Monica right now with their blue bus idea. And I'd like you to take a look into that. I don't know, maybe we can figure that one out. Here the blue bus runs all over the place. And they want to put these digital billboards on the side of the bus. And they want to start flashing all their commercials in my district without my permission. There are safety issues, there are pollution issues, and Santa Monica, once again, is overstepping its bound. And I'd like you to look into the blue bus and the whole mural business.
We're happy to look into it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. That is our last speaker. We did have a public hearing, but I know there's a lot of folks who are here with cards, so I would propose that we do a minute per speaker as well to allow a second public hearing if there's no objection. Okay. With that, we'll have a minute per speaker. Thank you for your understanding with the shorter timeline, but Isabel Rojas Williams is our first speaker. And good to see you in person.
Good morning. My name is Isabel Rojas Williams, and I'm here representing the Mural Conservancy of Los Angeles. We are grateful to City Council members Wizard, Reyes, Gregorian, Lamonge, Rosendahl, and to all of you for supporting our cause of saving the history of Los Angeles through its historical murals. We at the Mural Conservancy are at the verge of starting preservation and restoration of the iconic murals of the 101 freeway from the Olympic murals, and at Estrada Courts at this time to bring much needed pride to the city and to bring tourism to the city as well. Please remember when making your decisions that Los Angeles is a very unique city with unique people, and as such, unique decisions are needed. Let's lift the mural moratorium, let's respect and support our muralists, and let's make our city unique. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isabel. Lisbeth Espinosa is our next speaker. After that is Raul Gonzalez.
Good morning. My name is Lisbeth Espinosa, and I'm a community art historian. I'm also a member of the United of Painters Public Artists, UPPA. I don't approve item number 13 because community muralists are sitting behind me, and many community muralists from South Central, from Wilmington, from East LA are not part of the mural working group meeting that you formed or you created. Nor they have been invited to no cultural affairs meetings, nor they have been invited to no MCLA meetings. So item number 13 deletes the voice of the community muralist. And we don't appreciate that.
If you could address the council as a whole, please. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Murals should not be owned by the City of LA. No ordinance should be passed today until our community muralists are part of the dialogue.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Raul Gonzalez is our next speaker, then Lily Flor.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Raul Gonzalez. I'm Executive Director of Mictlan Murals. Mictlan Murals is an organization that's been working in Boyle Heights, East LA, pretty much in the greater LA area, creating murals with youth and with support from a lot of the council members here. My issue right now is with the ordinance that was proposed. A lot, like Lisbeth said before me, a lot of the information we didn't know about. We were not invited to the meetings. We wish to be a part of it, but at the same time, what we really want is that all the murals, or that the murals be defined as something as other than signed ordinance. That would actually get rid of the mural moratorium and open up the dialogue again and get the murals going again as it was. To pass new ordinances without having everybody at the table kind of disappoints me as a muralist, and makes me to believe that we're not included in the process. So, thank you.
Thank you. Lily Flor is our next speaker. We'll address at the end. And then Vayal.
Good afternoon, everyone. And my name is Lily Flor. And the last time I came in here, I walked in with wings. But today I walk in with things on my mind. I'm here on behalf of the United Painters and Public Artists and myself, the community members, muralists, educators, historians, ethnographers, storytellers, advocates, and preservationists of art and culture. And I'm as a concerned citizen and resident of the city of LA, this report definitely does not represent the artists. We need to define what are murals, and section 110923 murals must be defined as something other than a signage. I agree with Mr. Rosendale completely. The UPPA recommends that the ordinance be looked at first. We demand proper representation. This group that was formed does not represent all of us. I agreed with the last meeting that we had that the moratorium should be lifted and citations need to stop against property owners and these intimidation tactics that are being applied. Thank you.
Vayal is our next speaker. After that is Jorge Baraque.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm an artist from the Los Angeles area. I've been doing murals here in the city now for close to, I guess, 20 years now. And it really saddens me to see the state of, the mural situation here in Los Angeles. I have a lot of students that are looking forward to being able to produce work. And I hope that you guys can really come to some kind of agreement with us, that we can hurry up and get our work back on the walls, and that we can be proud of this city once more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Jorge Baraque. And then Omar Ramirez. Good morning.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, Council members. I'm here representing the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Los Angeles. We've been working with Councilmember Wizard in regards to the mural at Assumption School. The Archdiocese supports the proposal before you, and we hope we thank Councilman Wizard and Councilman Reyes for taking on this issue and dealing with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Omar Ramirez is our next speaker, then Margarita Amador.
Good morning, council members. My name is Omar Ramirez. I've been an artist for about 20 years. I've worked with Judy Baca at the Neighborhood Prize Murals. I've actually started nonprofit projects with murals in the California area. And I believe that we need to ensure that murals are equitable, that access to the process is equitable, and I want to make sure that at least the voice is heard from an artist, that the process is equitable from the DCA through all the attorneys and everybody, that the process is opened up. Not everybody that does a mural or owner of a building have to go through the DCA to get approval for a mural. I think that that's one of the concerns that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Margarita Amador. And then Jimmy Centeno.
Good morning again. My name is Margarita Amador, and I'm a resident of Boyle Heights. I'm also a member of the Boyle Heights Neighborhood Council and the Hollenbeck Police Advisory Board. And I'm not here representing them here. I'm representing myself as a resident, and I truly support the motion that's before you. I think murals are a representation of our communities, and like having to attack Assumption School for art that our children have put up is really an unfair just. And I think that, I also believe that they need to be include as many muralists throughout the city to be part of this working group, because it will have a representation of the city of LA. Again, art is what makes us an expression of who we are. So again, I am here to support the motion before you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll return to council members. Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, let me say how important it has been that so many members have contributed important motions relating to the protection of murals in the mural capital of the world. And all of these motions have contributed, I think, to the work product that is before us today. And I really want to congratulate staff for the tremendous work that you've done in slugging through some incredibly complex constitutional issues in order to get a reasoned and thoughtful solution to this. Because it seems like just good common sense that you could just say a mural isn't a sign and we should just have an ordinance that says murals aren't signs. But as we've seen, that gets a lot more complex when you actually get down to actually drafting language that distinguishes those two things. And we saw some great examples in committee during the PowerPoint presentation that we had to show how there are very difficult questions in defining where a mural ends and where a sign begins, if you will. And so I just want to ask staff if you could talk about the working group, talk about particularly about artist representation in the working group, because we had testimony from many muralists who came before us in the Joint Committee, who have been working with you, who have been helping to shape this policy. I'd like you to talk a little bit about that first, and then I'd like you to just, if you could, briefly talk about how you've addressed that issue of murals not being signs, and then talk about, and then if you can, just where are we going from here, next steps, because I think it's important that people understand we've made great progress. This proposal that you've started to put together is a tremendous step forward in restoring our proper place as the mural capital of the world. And I just don't want anyone to have the impression that we're taking a step backwards by not moving forward today. So if you could, please.
Tanner Blackman, City Planning. Thank you, and thank you for that opportunity, because I want to, I guess, first start addressing that by clarifying what item 13 is. There is no ordinance language in front of this council today. What happened last week in the committee was essentially the green light to start developing that language. So now, in earnest, can begin the workshopping process with the broader and greater public, and I need your guys' help in your individual districts in order to do that and have the greatest reach. I know that CD14's already arranged a couple meetings. CD11 had started to earlier this year. I've been in CD1, CD9, some others. I'm happy to come speak to your constituents, so help me put these meetings together. The mural working group itself is a small group that has only 15 to 20 people so far. I'm happy to grow it. These were folks who had already been quite involved in this process. I got involved in the mural issue from my involvement in the sign ordinance about beginning 3 years ago. And throughout that process, I had identified a group of people who consistently came to the hearings and committee meetings and different things, and asked them to be part of this working group starting in this past summer. July was the first time we met. We met again yesterday, actually, for only the second time. I wanted to recap with the group what happened last week and have them take a look at some very initial takes at language. So as I said, I'm happy to grow the working group, but also there's going to be plenty of opportunity for more public workshops and going out to the public as this moves forward. In terms of the issues, they are multiple. In a nutshell, it's important for everyone to know, I think, that at no time was it ever a policy goal of this city or of this council to restrict down areas available for creation of neighborhood enhancing public art. Prior to 1986, there was no mention of murals anywhere in our municipal code. In a way, that's the favorable position to be in, because absent a definition, absent regulation, it's kind of anything goes. And so in the 70s and 80s, that was the real flowering of our Mural Capital of the World title. And then in 1986, we created what is essentially the sign ordinance that we have now, the base of it. And we created that in 1986, 25 years ago, to address some of the same issues we're still dealing with today in terms of outdoor advertising, billboards, wall wraps. And in order to assert more control over signage in our city, we created the sign ordinance. That 1986 definition of mural sign is from our current ordinance, the 1986 one. At that time, we defined murals, but created a blanket exemption for fine art murals. So we had a set of rules that applied to signs, but we exempted murals from that. That was challenged legally by the outdoor advertising industry, and the result was essentially, in order to be compliant with the Constitution, we had to be equally unfair to everyone and treat murals as signs. And that's essentially the position we've been in for the last 9 years. The city of Portland and some other cities have provided some models of how to work within those constraints. And I presented on various different approaches to that. There's the public art easement idea. There's this administrative time, place, manner, permit idea. There's a district idea. And particularly to the city of LA, we have this vintage mural issue where anything created prior to today's ban is existing non-conforming, therefore presumably legal, but it's not clear in code. So we need to clarify these issues. This language is now under development. Make sure I have your contact info, and I will let you know as soon as that language is out and how you can help me craft that. So I'm happy to hear your commentary.
Thank you, Mr. Sorry, did Jimmy Centeno? Sorry, I'd said your name. I'm sorry. I thought you weren't here. Come on forward. We'll have one last speaker. My apologies. And then we'll go to Mr. Alarcon after that. Come on down. Good morning.
Buenos días a todos. Council Parks, Reyes, Rosendahl, Wesson, Gregorian, Koretz, and Huizar, and Alarcon. In fact, I did some work for senators, young senators down over there at Pacoima. Okay, so just wanted to mention that. But it's very important for me here to be sure that we've sort of gotten mixed in the language as to what is signage and as to what is murals. Obviously, there was a clear definition as to what murals was, an expression of the people from the people, obviously from communities. If murals are supposed to be an enhancement of community, then that could probably begin dictating precisely what is beautiful and precisely what is not a concern of the city. I mean, that's key right here. The city is concerned, and murals are not just about the struggles, but they're also about celebrations of our city. I think we need to make that very clear. You know, begin dictating or establishing or getting confused. Look at all the energy that has been wasted so far on all this talk. And it's unfair that people in advertising business have more capital, more lobbying pull than the people in the streets and artists themselves who are actually out there engaging on a day-to-day basis.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you. And I think we all agree. Thank you. Well put. Mr. Alarcon.
Council members, as you know, I worked for Mayor Bradley. That was 30 years ago in 1981. And one of my functions was to manage the city's mural project, where we funded the development of murals throughout the city, many of which are famous, and you're very familiar with them. Produced by the Social Public Arts Resource Center in Santa Monica, by the way. But is it Venice? Okay. Their address in Santa Monica. That must be the post office. But anyway, but Judy Bacca's from Pacoima, I'll have you know, so in Cal State Northridge. The reason I rise is that the debate has not changed in 30 years, as far as I can tell. But I think that over 30 years, you would think we would have developed a policy that draws that line, that is clear to everybody in the real world, and gets boggled in the minds of our court system, quite frankly, because they deal with it from a totally different perspective. That's not to criticize the court system, it's just that we need to bring that clarity to the court system, and we haven't done that in 30 years. Clearly, a mural that is not advertising a product for sale is art. And while there may be murals that do advertise products for sale, I think there's a dividing line between the two, that one falls in the category of billboard and the other doesn't. We have to find that definition. That is the challenge that is before us. But even if we did find that dividing line, we're still going to have communities that are divided about which murals they want in their areas and where they want them. So we continue to need clarification in this regard. And I want to say that I do appreciate the department's inclusion of a consideration about how are you going to maintain this thing. Because that's been a historical problem. About every 10 years or so, the things fall into decrepit condition, and what was a tremendous, beautiful piece of art becomes a tattered blight in many cases in the same communities that it was provided to enhance. So I want to applaud the work that is going forward. We need to do this, and we absolutely need to bring the artists in. At the same time, I think the neighborhood councils give us a good balancing of considerations that we need to incorporate into our development of policies and procedures and definitions, more importantly, so that we can use murals in a way to beautify this city, which has a rich history of murals, at the same time respecting community rights that do not besmirch the history of that neighborhood. So with that, I want to applaud your work and would make myself available for free consultation if you should care to listen to anything.
Thank you, Mr. Alarcon. Mr. Reyes.
One of the challenges we have is moving this in a manner that passes legal muster. One of the anchors that's been pulling us down and slowing us down is waiting for the courts to come back with the worldwide rush findings. That worldwide rush findings finally gave us the capacity to formulate the strategy that we have before us. The ability to absorb what our muralists want to see, what our communities want to see through these workshops, through these public hearings, will give us real clear and specific methods by which we can incorporate that energy and continue celebrating the diversity of this great city through murals. Now, what is also holding us back is the lack of personnel. I got a report yesterday from the city attorney's office. They're down 30% on their staff. That they have stacks of ordinances that are piling up from the land use committee that have yet to address. So while this is occurring, while we're waiting, while we're getting queued up and waiting for personnel to do their job because they're overworked and overloaded, we have enforcement issues where our young people and muralists are being criminalized and being arrested because they're putting up murals that essentially are just exhibiting their artwork. And so we did have individuals come to our committee and say, why are our young people being arrested for murals? Why are they being essentially criminalized for doing artwork? Now, everyone's going to say art is in the eyes of the beholder. And I'm not going to go there. That's not what this is about. This is about how we create parameters that allows muralists to do their job without getting arrested, to do their work. Now, we're going to try to move this as quick as possible, but we can't do this overnight. I wish we could have done this 8 years ago when we came into office, 9 years ago, but the lawsuits were in place as a result of our work on the signage issue. So now we're here. We're being opportunistic. There's a lot of energy coming from Mr. Blackman and Mr. Roush, and we're pushing this. But I would hope that the city attorney, and maybe that's something we can do, and ask him to report to us as to how they're going to approach the issue, and working with the LAPD when they go after our young people who are doing murals. But what can we do to mitigate that action until we can get clear how we can move forward on the mural process? So I ask you for your patience. I do want to move forward. It's a shame that we have to be in this place because of lawsuits. And yes, people with deep pockets from certain companies did sue the city and did put us in this place, but this is one of those complex realities in trying to find that open space for us to move legally so that we can address the First Amendment right of freedom of speech in a manner that allows us to move forward. So the Malcolm Point colleagues, where we have to put a list of all our ordinances and say, these are the top 3 you want the city attorney to move forward. And I say this with a certain, I have asked in the past, I've sent letters to my colleagues, I've asked you, give me your priorities. And my response, I don't get a response. I think I got one response from Greg Smith. But I've sent out these letters, and I do want to make sure we move forward, because I know each one of us has dire issues when it comes to land use. But the struggle is 40% of the staff in planning is gone, and I believe it's about 30% of the city attorney's office is gone. All of the people with experience in land use committee have left, and we've got good, strong people now, but it's also a learning curve. So I thank you for your patience, and we should move this forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reyes. Mr. Huizar.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm sure the staff will get back to some of the public speakers that felt they weren't part of the process, because it was a pretty extensive process from my here. But if those people hadn't felt like they participated, I'm sure you'll love to talk to them. And I think, Tana, your presentation that you made in our joint committee answered a lot of the questions that were brought up today. And it'd be helpful, I think, at the next, when it comes to full council, if you could give that presentation or abbreviated version of that, because it really helps us understand what all the issues involved. And I think what I took away from your presentation is, as we've all wanted to do, is to provide the maximum opportunity for artists to provide freedom of expression on the walls or wherever it is we put these murals on, and that is our goal here. So I don't think we want to in any way limit, as one speaker expressed, and have the city say what would be a mural and what would not be a mural. Our goal is to allow them to happen and then go at it. The muralists can do as they wish, given all the other First Amendment rights that go along with that. So the other thing, I think this was a good process here, even if we're not moving forward and going back to committee. We do, given the resource limitations as expressed by Mr. Reyes, we still are expressing that this is a priority to move forward, and we have a solution now. There have been a number of motions that have been proposed in the past, and we've come to a point now where I think we're saying, okay, we have a solution now through some creative thinking. This is a priority now for us to move forward. I think we could express that to the city attorney's office. And one thing that is so important that I think that Mr. Alarcon brought up, and that is making sure that we have resources available for a revenue stream for the preservation and maintenance of murals. One of the motions I put forward suggested that we look at the Graffiti Abatement Trust Fund, and I know that in the report back that in the ordinance that we're getting back, Mr. Alarcon, we did direct staff to come up with a revenue stream so that we can maintain. It was at a time the city was, in a few years back, actually doing a lot more of the murals we see. They're making resources available to artists, but as Mr. Alarcon pointed out, we didn't have the resources for maintenance, and now we don't want to go down that path again, and we're asking for that in our report backs in our motion. And finally, we in this process learned a lot from the artists that participated in the stakeholder meetings, etc. And I think we couldn't have come up with a better solution, just given all the other limitations. But again, I'll go back to your presentation you made. If we could have that presentation to full council when we come back, Mr. Reyes, I think that would help. A lot of the concerns and questions that we have could be answered beforehand if Mr. Tanner can make the presentation when it comes back to full council.
Hey, I'd like to suggest, consistent with what you're saying, and just be very clear, the planning staff will be working with the city attorney, will be working with the stakeholders. They'll be wordsmithing this ordinance. When we get the draft, we can have this discussion here on the council floor, or we can take care of it through a joint committee and reach final form here and have our colleagues come to the joint committee and we can wordsmith there. That is possible too, but I sense the urgency. I want to see it happen. I don't want to see our young people and our muralists in general getting arrested for doing murals. We should find sanctuary for them to make this happen.
Yeah.
So either way will work. I just want to get it done as quick as possible.
And the other point that you raised, Mr. Reyes, is I know, such as the example at Assumption School and other situations, Building and Safety has gone out there and issued citations. We've spoken with Building and Safety, and they said, we're doing our job. That's the response we get, is that we get a complaint. We can't ignore that complaint. It's our duty and obligation and responsibility to go out there and look into it. But we have asked the City Attorney's Office to ease off on those right now until we get a solution. So although those citations have been issued, it is under the discretion of the City Attorney to move forward with those even further, and they've agreed to hold off on those until we get a further solution on this. So that is where that is. So I don't want people to be concerned out there who have received citations and they're wondering what to do. It is under the City Attorney's discretion, purview and discretion to not prosecute those right now and to look for other solutions. And that's why I also propose that we use the ACE program when we can, if we can, as another means of addressing those issues, so we wouldn't be issuing citations in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Huizar. Let's go ahead now, and we have this before us. Thank you to all the folks who've come out for public comment for this, and the muralists especially who took time of their day to be here. Let's go ahead and open the roll on this, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Thank you. That is approved. Mr. Reyes? Yep, and let's get to send it to committee. Thank you very much. Appreciate you all being here, and stay tuned. We'll continue to move forward on that with the planning department. Next item called special. Oh, sorry. And can we send the earlier item forthwith, 12? Yep.
That would be item 12, sir.
Yep. We'll send that forthwith, please, without objection. Next item.
Very good. That brings us to item 17, called special for Council Member Zine.
Dennis Zine, number 17.
President, I want to acknowledge Mr. Krikorian from the legislative days. This is about the mobile trailers that are plaguing many communities in the San Fernando Valley. Mr. Cardenas, Mr. Alarcon, Mr. Englander, Mr. Koretz, the trailers that have been parked, we had legislation to address that issue. That was Senate Bill 2756, established the law. And then the individuals who are parking those found some loopholes, so now we have Assembly Bill 1298, and 1298 is going to take effect January 1st. The governor has signed it, and Mr. Englander introduced a motion to amend our current ordinance on this. It's going to include mobile and non-motorized vehicles or bicycles that carry or pull or transport a sign or billboard. What the folks have done is they've taken the mobile billboards, the ones that they park on a trailer, and they now attach a motorized device or a bicycle to it to try and skirt the law when it says unattended, unattached. And we're looking forward to having our ordinance changed to comply with the new state law so we can once again remove them from the streets of the city of Los Angeles, including the San Fernando Valley. There's a lot of complaints that come in, and it restricts the visibility. It's a hazard, and the folks that bring these to the community don't care about the law. So what I'm going to do in my district, January 1st, as long as we get the city attorney to amend this ordinance, is to launch another task force, which we did this last January, impounded a number of them from the streets, and my district is relatively clear of these mobile trailer billboards that are advertising a variety of products. So what we want to do is have this pass, have the city attorney's office amend that ordinance so we can include according to the new law as signed by the governor. Dion? Question.
Item 17 actually is a receive and file of a legislative position. The ordinance that you're talking about is another matter and should be addressed at a different meeting.
Well, according to 17, communication from the chairman of government relations, the city's position on this, which would revise the definition of mobile billboard advertising to include the mobile and non-motorized vehicle or bicycle that carries. So I don't know about receive and file versus have the ordinance amended, according to what my notes are on item number 17. If I can have clarification.
The ordinance isn't before you, and this is just receiving and filing the legislative position. I assume it's because the legislation has already been passed.
No, the governor signed it. Okay, so but we
that's why it's receive and file.
But we have to amend our local ordinance. So that's the motion Mr. Englander submitted, so we can have that amended ordinance come and take effect January 1st. That's our goal.
Yeah, and that's by a separate motion and a separate process that's going.
So we'll receive and file this, and then the motion that Mr. Englander signed by Mr. Cardenas will then go to the Transportation Committee, so we can have that done hopefully, and Mr. Garcetti signed on that, so we can have that done before January 1st. I don't know if you have it on the west side, but we do have plagued all over the San Fernando Valley. Okay? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues.
Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to take a moment, since we are talking specifically about AB 1298, Dion, I do want to talk about AB 1298 just for a moment to say how much I and I think many of us appreciate the work of Assemblymember Bob Blumenfield in helping to shepherd through the changes in state law that facilitated our ability to do this regulation at the city level. And Mr. Zine, I know, has been shadowed and harassed by some of the purveyors of this mobile billboard advertising. I've seen it personally as he's been harassed by these people. Assemblymember Blumenfield similarly has been stalked and harassed and had these mobile billboards parked in front of his house and has been harassed in front of his children by the operators of these mobile billboards who've put up horrible references to him on the mobile billboard itself and then had it parked in front of his house. So I think that AB 1298 is just another indication of how Assemblymember Blumenfield has stood up to these folks with us, with Councilmember Zine and many of the others of us who've been working on this issue. And I just want to thank him publicly for being willing to take that abuse and get this job done, get a bill that was signed by the governor so that we can have the room to continue to regulate this scourge that's so omnipresent in the San Fernando Valley, mobile blight. And we're going to continue to work together to get rid of these once and for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Krikorian. Let's go ahead and open the roll on this item. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. Thank you. Next item, please.
That brings us to item 21, called Special for Cards.
Okay, Antonio Ramirez is our first speaker on item 21. I'd like to come forward. And then we have Elizabeth Bluestein.
Thank you to both Council President Eric Garcetti and Councilmember Bill Rosendahl. Thank you so very much for taking a stand on providing detrimental assistance to our homeless military veterans, whether they are uniformed or ununiformed, active or inactive. These precious souls are tormented and carrying a fragmented soul. Many are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorders and suicidal thoughts, along with physically being challenged, because they are in financial and housing despair. My hope and mission in life is to offer all I can with your help in making all our military heroes and our great warriors of the world whole and complete. Furthermore, restore them all, including our supersonic military aviators, to their rightful station in life. This is first and foremost to provide them with jobs and housing, which would include safe, freedom-friendly, loving, non-toxic, vibrant, healthy, peaceful, harmonious environments, and free from racist Latino chango gangbangers in uniform brutality, as we saw in Thomas Kelly case. In addition, that the communities that have theaters, sporting events, libraries, shopping centers, workshops, military events, all forms of therapeutic activities and sessions within walking distance, and or shuttle service providers. And as such, to all my military pilots, civilian pilots, and military veterans, look alive, for now the tables have turned in it, and they dearly love you, and you are really deeply admired. So again, the life and the universe are in your favor, pilots and military. Kick ass, baby. You got balls. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Bluestein is our next speaker.
Thank you. My name is Elizabeth Bluestein, and I'm the General Counsel of Public Counsel, the nation's largest pro bono law firm. And our 50 staff attorneys and thousands of volunteers deliver free legal assistance to a wide spectrum of people living below the poverty level. And this program will enable us to integrate legal services into street outreach efforts to help house homeless veterans. These services will include income maximization efforts through benefits advocacy, which is crucial to help veterans who are currently living or subsisting on general relief of only $221 a month to move on to SSI or veterans benefits and the accompanying health benefits that can help increase housing options for veterans and help them get the mental health and other health care that they need to sustain housing. And our services will also be able to draw on the full continuum of legal supports that we have to help veterans overcome other legal barriers to housing, such as tickets and warrants that may serve as barriers to entering housing or that may disrupt social service efforts when, for example, a veteran who's recently moved into housing is picked up on an old outstanding warrant and is lost to jail. And we believe that including legal advocates in the street outreach and case management for veterans at the front end will make a crucial difference and has the promise to emerge as a national model, exemplifying best practices in integrated services. Right now, we have the opportunity to leverage these city funds because we have with this innovative project, attracted the support of 2 private funders that have pledged to match the funds if they're approved. So we respectfully request that you approve this motion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. President Garcetti.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And colleagues, you'll hear more about this when we do a little bit more work to announce some of the program. But thank you to Public Counsel for your great and amazing work. I welcomed home a shipmate and a friend this weekend from deployment in Iraq, one of the last deployments, one of the last folks to be there. And he came home safe and sound. He got engaged. He's going to be married. He was able to survive what the conditions there when rockets would rain down, still even today, inside the base that he was in Iraq. And he's going to be okay. But for so many of our veterans who are coming home today, that isn't necessarily the case. We see veterans not just from these wars, but also from past wars, who are on our streets, sleeping on our streets here in the United States of America. It's unacceptable. We must, as Americans, remember who we are and learn their names, learn their stories, learn their history, find out their needs, and get them back into life, to win that war here that they wage every single day. So we're going to be doing that throughout Hollywood, where we have welcomed folks home. Good old Johnny Grant, may he rest in peace, our former mayor of Hollywood, honorary mayor of Hollywood, welcome back after the first Gulf War. It was a time when he brought Vietnam vets and Gulf War vets together to heal that time after Vietnam when so many veterans came home to derision and to hatred and other things. And Hollywood has always stood strong for our veterans. We've got a great post there on Highland that a lot of our veterans spend time at, but there's too many that are still out on the streets, and appreciate the opportunity to use some of our funds to be able to make sure that we can make right what is wrong today and truly bring them home. Thank you.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Yes, thank you for public comments as well, and of course, Public Counsel, you're great. You do a lot of the Lord's work, and we appreciate it. As a veteran from the Vietnam era, and having been a psychiatric social worker and seeing 8 or 9 Vietnam vets a day, they're out there in the garbage can area. We have 9,000 veterans living on our streets in Los Angeles. Some are service resistant, and they really need social counseling to help them appreciate that services would matter in their lives, especially as they get older and suffer even more with the elements out there. So this is just a drop in the bucket. It's just a move in the right direction. You know, I'm still upset with Washington. They talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. We have a VA property in my district, and frankly, there should be a lot of those buildings filled with homeless veterans, not vacated, and we need to build more housing for veterans. We're not doing enough as a nation, but every little step is better than nothing, and thank you, Mr. Garcetti, for your motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Matters before us. I was distracted by Mr. Guy. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
That brings us to item 24, called Special 4 Cards.
24, we will hear from Arnold Sachs, who has left the chambers. Items before his colleagues. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Next item, please, Mr.
That
Clerk.
brings us to item 25, called Special for Councilmember Garcetti, a substitute motion. Motion Garcetti Reyes has been distributed and is before council for its consideration.
Antonia Ramirez, number 25, ma'am.
Again, thank you very much. I would like to say to the City of LA to lift the ban on the present law fences height. And that is because many of us property owners would like to raise our fence height a little higher to keep the racist wetbacks and gangbanger Latinos out of our property. For you know all too well, these Chango Latino violate and abuse your space, your property, and your person. If it's not graffiti, it's vandalism. Let us be safe within our own castle and our own home and our property, free from these public and private nuisances. They are chronically nosy invaders and intruders of our privacy. They are like a reptilian savages. They don't respect anybody's privacy, much less their own. And this eventually develops to violence and vandalism. And we all know the problems that Los Angeles and America is facing with vandalisms and chronic hate crimes and violence due to these gangbangers and illegal wetbacks. As we all know that the ranchers along the borders also have a chronic problems with these illegals coming into their property night and day. If it weren't for the Border Patrol in the night and the Blackhawks, they would have been under 10 feet under. So again, I'm asking you to help us raise the fence height and again, freedom of speech and First Amendment. Whether these Latinos like it or not, I give a crap. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. Next. Are you going to pass? Okay. A request to move the substitute motion on this matter. Open the roll. 25. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Next item, please.
That brings us to item 26, called Special for Cards.
Number 26 is Antonio Ramirez.
Thank you. Well, how to promote commerce and business in the Toluca Lake Business District and all other city districts is quite simple. First and foremost, hire military veterans, whether they are uniformed or ununiformed, active or inactive, and recall all furloughed military and civilian pilots. Put them to work, and metaphysically, you'll jumpstart the economy because all pilots and military veterans are a springboard of great energy with zest and zeal, good vibrations, and pure, innocent blood sacrifice of human dignity. And the universe will bless you with prosperity, health, happiness, and everlasting peace. And we will restore the beauty of America. Stop hiring criminal, illegal aliens and gangbangers.
Mr. President, this is about a street banner.
Street banner. Ms. Ramirez, you need to be on the focus of the topic, ma'am. You're far off the focus of installation of street banners, so thank you very much. Your time is now over. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
Mr. President, Council has motions for posting and referral.
Post and referred?
I'm sorry, sir. We should first vote on that matter.
Okay, let's vote on that before we post and refer. Open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Thank you very much. Next item, please. Mr. Weezer, you look good in pink, by the way. Mr. Weezer?
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Posted and referred. I said you look good in pink.
The desk is clear.
All right. Announcements, colleagues? See no announcements. Adjourning motions? See no adjourning motions? No adjourning motions. No announcements. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll. This concludes this meeting of the Los Angeles City Council. We return on Friday. Have a good afternoon, Los Angeles. Signing off from City Hall.